You've arrived at CozySideAudio, where dreams begin with a story. Tonight's tale is here to help you wind down and find peace. If this brings you comfort, please like, share, and subscribe so more dreamers can join us. Let the night carry you, and let's begin. CozySideAudio presents The Veil Below. Chapter 1, The Weight of Dust. The house had been quiet for 6 years. Not silent, never silent. The floorboards still creaked under their own age. The wind still whispered through the cracked weather stripping around the windows. The old pipes knocked when no one was using the water. But even when Ava Callahan walked through the hallway now, breathing, thinking, existing, the place still felt quiet in the way a church does after the sermon ends and everyone forgets to come back. She stood at the threshold of her brother's room. The door hadn't been locked. It never had been. But her mother stopped going in a month after Lucas vanished, and Ava had only stepped inside once, a year ago, in the middle of a thunderstorm, half drunk on the feeling that she might find a version of him curled up in the closet. That feeling didn't come from hope. It came from the creeping sense that the house was playing tricks on her. She stepped in now. It still smelled like dust and old pine detergent. Not like Lucas. He used to wear this awful orange deodorant that made the whole second floor smell like citrus and sweat, even after his runs through the woods behind their neighborhood. That smell was long gone. Only the bones of the room remained, books, trophies, shoes left under a desk like they had somewhere to be. Ava didn't cry. She hadn't cried in a long time. Instead, she moved to the desk and sat down in the rickety office chair. It tilted slightly to the left like always, like it remembered him. Her fingers hovered over the drawer, the one she used to sneak into for candy or spare change or answers. She opened it. There wasn't much inside. A few notebooks, some old movie tickets, and a folded piece of paper so worn it felt soft at the edges. She pulled it out. Lucas's handwriting was there, scratchy and tilted, the way he always wrote when he was trying to be clever. You ever feel like something's watching us from behind the sky? She stared at it for a long time. The paper didn't explain anything. It only confirmed what she already knew. Lucas hadn't just run away. People didn't vanish like that. They left a door open somewhere. And something came through. The walk to Max's place was short, but Bridgemeyer always made short walks feel longer than they were. The town had a way of settling into your spine like cold water. Every road curved too sharply. Every tree leaned too far into the street. The fog didn't wait until morning anymore. It lingered like someone waiting for an apology. Max Ellery's house sat like an afterthought at the edge of Granger Street, where the power lines drooped low and the mailboxes looked like they'd given up standing straight. Ava didn't knock. She just opened the screen door and stepped in, because boundaries didn't exist between the three of them. Not after what they'd lived through. Max was exactly where she expected him to be, in the garage, surrounded by wires, blinking lights, and a tripod with a half-finished camera rig mounted sideways on it. He wore the same yellow hoodie he always did, patched with duct tape and permanent marker graffiti. His hair was a mess, and his hands were stained with grease or maybe ink. "Ava," he said without looking up, "tell me you're here to talk about the tremor." Ava blinked. "What tremor?" He grinned, finally meeting her eyes. "So you didn't feel it? That means I'm not crazy. Only half crazy." Max started over. He turned a dial on the weird little screen beside him. Static buzzed to life, warbled and jittering. "Last night," he said, around 3 a.m. There was a pulse. Like a microquake, but different. No sound. Just this feeling. It hit like a heartbeat in the dirt. I was awake. It shook the walls. I checked the seismic sensors from the bridge. They picked it up too, but no official quake got logged. She stepped closer to the monitor. On it, a faint waveform jittered up and down like a dying EKG line. "Something blinked," he said. "That's what it felt like. Like the whole town blinked." Ava didn't respond at first. Her mind had latched onto one word, pulse. "Lucas left a note," she said quietly. Max's grin faltered. "I found it today," she continued. "Said he thought something was watching us from behind the sky." Max leaned back like the words had physically knocked into him. "Shit," he muttered. "Well, that's not creepy at all." "It means something, Max." He didn't argue. He never did when it came to Lucas. They met Jules near the river. She was skipping stones like always, her hoodie pulled up over her head, hands in her pockets. When Ava called her name, she didn't turn. She just let the stone fly across the dark water. Jules Moreno had never been one for small talk, but she listened. And when they told her about the pulse and the note, and the fact that Ava had finally opened Lucas's drawer, she nodded once and said, "Then we should check the bridge." The bridge had always been a place of whispers in Bridgemire. It wasn't old, built sometime in the 60s, but it had weight. A strange weight. One that made your ears ring when you stood under it too long. Some kids said you could hear voices if you held your breath while crossing it. Others said it was haunted. Max brought his gear. Ava brought the note. Jules brought her silence. They stood beneath the bridge as the sun dipped low behind the trees, throwing long fingers of light across the crumbling concrete. The river murmured below like it was trying to remember how to speak. Max set up the sensor dish. The static came back, louder this time. Less like noise, more like something trying to speak a language that wasn't built for mouths. Jules looked up suddenly. There. Ava followed her gaze. On the underside of the bridge, carved deep into the stone, was a symbol. It hadn't been there before. Not 6 months ago. Not even a week ago. 3 lines bent into a triangle surrounding a jagged circle. It looked like a warning. Or map. Or both. Max snapped a photo. Ava reached up to touch it. The concrete burned cold beneath her fingertips. Not cold like ice. Cold like absence. Like the feeling you get when someone who's supposed to be there isn't. The static screeched, spiking so loud it forced all 3 of them to stagger back. Then silence. True silence. And the sky, for just a breath, looked wrong, too deep, too still, like the color had shifted just a hair out of place. Ava knew without words, without proof, that this was the beginning. The veil was thinning, and whatever had taken Lucas was not done with them yet. Chapter 2: Patterns in the Static. The next morning, Bridgemire forgot how to breathe. Not literally, but Ava felt it in her skin. The air hung heavier than usual, syrupy and still, like the entire town had been paused mid-inhale. At school, people moved through the halls with glassy expressions. Mr. Hanley forgot his lecture halfway through and just sat down without explanation. Even the lights in the science wing buzzed slower, dimmer, like someone had siphoned off a layer of brightness. Ava stood in the middle of it all, watching the static creep along the edges of normal life. It didn't make sense, none of it did, but that was the part that made her believe it even more. When things stopped making sense in Bridgemire, it didn't mean someone messed up. It meant something beneath the town had stirred. And now it was watching again. Max didn't come to school. Not physically. Instead, Ava got a text during 3rd period. Max looped the waveform into an amplifier last night. Static cracked the power in my garage. Blamed it on a squirrel. Might have blown a hole in the veil. Call me. She rolled her eyes, but she wasn't annoyed. Max could be dramatic, sure, but she'd seen the burn mark on the bridge, the shape on the concrete, the strange moment the sky had glitched. He wasn't wrong. He just didn't know what to do with being right. By the time school let out, Ava found Jules already waiting at the corner of Cross and Maple. She leaned against a rusted bike rack, hoodie up again, one earbud in. A white chalk line curved across the pavement beneath her boot. Ava squinted. You draw that? Nope. What is it? Not sure. Jules pulled the bud out. It was here when I got here. Looks fresh. Ava crouched down. The chalk wasn't ordinary, it shimmered faintly under the fading sun. Almost like it wasn't chalk at all. More like ash. Shaped into a loop, fractured in the center. Jules looked down at her. Lucas ever talk about symbols? Just the one on the bridge. Guess we should ask Max if this one's new to his collection. They didn't speak much as they walked. Jules didn't do filler conversation, and Ava was fine with silence that had purpose. The streets around them felt thinner today. Not emptier, just stretched, like they were moving through something that wasn't quite done forming. At Max's house, they found the garage door cracked open and faint electrical whining spilling out in waves. Inside, it looked like a conspiracy bunker exploded. There were cables everywhere. twisting around folding chairs taped to ceiling beams, looping through mismatched screens. One monitor showed nothing but a black triangle spinning against a gray background. Another flashed symbols that didn't look human. Max stood in the center of it all, wearing goggles and holding a metal rod with wires sparking from the base. He looked up as they entered. "Oh good. Sanity checks arrived." Jules frowned. "Are you building a doomsday machine?" "No," Max said, dragging out the word. "I'm investigating temporal echoes." Ava pointed to the sparking rod. "You know that thing could kill you, right?" "Technically, it could kill anyone. That's what makes it exciting." He set the rod down and pulled off the goggles. His eyes were ringed with shadow, the kind that didn't come from lack of sleep alone. The pulse came back. "This morning. Just for a second." Ava's heart tightened. "You felt it again?" "No. That's the weird part, I didn't feel it. I heard it. Through the signal. And I recorded it this time." He pulled up a file on the laptop, clicked play. At first, just static. Then underneath it, a voice. Not speaking exactly. Not even whispering. But something trying to be language. Something straining across distance. Ava leaned in. "Can you isolate it?" "Already did." He tapped another file. This time, the sound was clearer. It was rhythmic, not words, more like a code. 3 tones, silence, 2 tones, longer silence. Then it repeated. Max tapped the waveform. "Whatever this is, it's not just interference. It's structured. Intentionally patterned. Almost like Morse, but wrong." Jules crossed her arms. "So either someone's broadcasting fake ghost signals, or something real is trying to talk." Max nodded. "And I think it's been trying for a long time." He pulled up a map, an aerial shot of Bridgemire. On it, he'd marked 5 locations with blue pins. The bridge, the school's old boiler room, a burned-out greenhouse behind the church, the empty lot where the town's first library used to stand, and the overgrown train tunnel near the woods. All of these spots have reported minor tremors or signal distortion in the past 10 years. Different times, different years, but always within this triangle. He drew a connection between them. The shape that formed was almost identical to the symbol under the bridge. Ava stared at it. Jules said nothing, but she stepped closer. "What if," Max continued, "these aren't random incidents? What if they're anchor points?" Ava raised an eyebrow. "For what?" Max hesitated. "Then, a rift. Between layers. If our world is the surface, then maybe there's something pressed just beneath it. Something that bleeds through in places where the barrier is weakest." Ava felt the weight of Lucas's note again. Something behind the sky. Max moved to another screen, pulling up grainy footage from last night. Security cam feed his garage. Timestamp, 3:14 a.m. For a moment, nothing. Then the lights in the garage blinked. The frame glitched twice, and on the second flicker, something appeared. In the corner by the door, just for a frame. A figure. Thin. Slightly translucent. Standing perfectly still. Then gone. Ava's breath caught. Jules leaned in. "Was that?" "I looped it 30 times, Max said. Frame by frame. It's not compression. It's not artifacting. It's real. I think we caught one." Ava whispered, in echo form. The word felt heavier out loud. Like naming it brought it closer. Max exhaled. If that's what Lucas saw, what he followed, then maybe he didn't just disappear. "He crossed into something," Jules said quietly. "And now it's looking back." That night, Ava didn't go home. She sat alone beneath the bridge, flashlight off, Lucas's note folded in her jacket pocket. The water below murmured like before, but now she heard something else in it. Rhythm, pattern, breathing. She pressed her hand to the concrete wall. No burn this time. Only a pulse. Faint but there. As if the stone itself had a heartbeat. Chapter 3, The Shape Beneath. The sound came again the next night. Not from Max's equipment this time, or from the tremor-streaked bridge. It came from under Ava's floor. A soft, warbled crackle, like radio static soaked through wet leaves, and when she sat up in bed and listened, it vanished. No echo. No real trace. But it left something behind, the feeling of having been overheard. She didn't sleep after that. By morning, the feeling had settled deep under her skin. School was nothing but a blur of rustling papers and buzzing lights, conversations that didn't stick, and eyes that refused to meet hers. She'd begun to notice it more lately, that weird, collective disinterest in talking about anything strange. It wasn't just avoidance. It felt like forgetting. She watched a kid in her biology class draw the same triangle symbol from the bridge in the corner of his notebook, absent-mindedly. He didn't even notice. When Ava asked him about it after class, he blinked like he was waking up. He swore he hadn't drawn it. The triangle haunted her walk to Max's again. It wasn't just a symbol anymore, it had become a shape beneath things. She began to see it in the street cracks, the layout of streetlights, the chalk marks that seemed to multiply when no one was looking. Max had spread them across his wall, every location that pulsed or flickered in the last 10 years. But today Jules brought something new. "Library," she said, tossing a folded piece of yellowed newspaper onto Max's workbench. It was an article from 1962, the day after the library caught fire. 4 dead. 1 missing. Witnesses claimed they heard someone screaming from underground, but rescue teams found nothing. The building had been condemned, razed, and eventually paved over to make a flower shop. The flower shop closed last year. "Why this now?" Ava asked. "Because the pattern's shifting," Jules replied. She pulled out another article, this one dated only 3 months after the fire. Another death. And another set of strange symbols scratched into a school bathroom mirror. Triangles again. Circles with slashes through them. The same marks now appearing beneath chalk lines, in forgotten corners of classrooms, etched into tree bark at the edge of town. "Every time the veil thins," Jules said, "people disappear." They went to the flower shop's ruins at dusk. The air had that thickness again, like the town was exhaling dust through every crack. The lot was choked with weeds and half-collapsed lattice trellises, brittle petals crunching beneath their boots. The shop itself had been boarded up, but the back door had rotted clean through. Max carried a handheld receiver rigged to his signal dish. It whined steadily the closer they got to the center of the lot. Jules found a warped garden spade and used it to scrape away loose dirt. Not long after, they hit stone. A slab buried just beneath the surface, gray-veined and cracked down the middle. A faint triangle had been etched into the center, weathered nearly smooth. Ava ran her fingers along the edge. "It's not just a symbol. It's a seal." "Or a lock," Max said. The receiver screamed, sharp, electric, and then snapped into perfect silence. The 3 of them froze. Silence was worse than static. Silence meant something was listening back. That night, Ava sat on her bedroom floor surrounded by her brother's old notebooks. Most were filled with scribbles about horror movies, comic book lore, or school drama. But one, the black one with the frayed spine, was different. She opened to a page near the middle. There were sketches, diagrams, a layout of Bridgemire with red dots around the train tunnel, the bridge, the greenhouse. A note scrawled in the margin. Rift lines, thin spots. Another page showed a sequence of shapes: triangle, triangle, circle, broken line. Underneath, Lucas had written, "Not signals, memories. Ghosts of moments that never happened. If I'm right, then Bridgemire is a wound. The veil is the scab, and something's been picking at it." Ava's hands tightened around the page. Lucas hadn't just found something. He'd been looking for it. The train tunnel sat at the edge of town, half swallowed by trees. Once meant to connect Bridgemire to the next city over. The project had been abandoned after a mudslide back in the 40s. No one ever finished clearing the debris, and now it was little more than a black mouth gaping into the hillside. The 3 of them stood in front of it the next morning. Max adjusted the receiver again, antenna pointing toward the entrance. Jules carried a flashlight and an old camcorder she'd borrowed from the AV room. Ava held nothing but Lucas's notebook, her fingers curled tight around the spine. The air near the tunnel felt off. Like breathing, it changed you in a way you wouldn't notice until something inside had already shifted. Max clicked the scanner on. It began playing the same rhythm again: 3 tones, pause, 2 tones, longer pause. But then something changed. A second rhythm faded in behind the first. Slower. Out of sync. Like a reply. Jules stopped walking. Did you hear that? Ava turned. What? Jules looked pale. Someone said my name. No one said anything. I heard it, Ava. It was right behind me. Just once. Max frowned. That might be part of it. Part of what? He hesitated. Then, the echo forms. I think they're not just mimics. They're constructs, memory loops, and they use familiarity to draw people in. Jules glanced at the tunnel. And once you follow them, you end up where Lucas went. Ava stepped forward slowly, notebook still clutched in one hand. She didn't cross into the tunnel yet, but she felt the pull. Not metaphorical, a literal pull. Like gravity gone crooked. Like her shadow was trying to step forward without her. The inside of the tunnel was pitch black. But the shape of it. It wasn't a normal arch. It was 3 lines converging into a rough triangle. A tunnel with edges like a symbol. Like it had been built for the wrong purpose. Ava's voice barely rose above the trees. We need to go in. And this time no one argued. Chapter 4, Cross the Threshold. The first step inside the tunnel felt colder than it should have. Not just colder than outside, but unrealistically cold, like the concrete walls had been soaked in something ancient and wrong. Max muttered under his breath as they crossed the invisible line between light and dark. Feels like stepping into someone else's memory. The air shifted the moment they were all inside. Ava didn't say anything, but she felt it too, how the tunnel swallowed sound. Their footsteps made no echo. The beam of Jules's flashlight stretched only so far before it dimmed unnaturally, as if the dark itself resisted being pushed back. For a while they walked in silence. The walls were rough concrete, lined with mold and vines. But every 20 feet or so the tunnel changed. The walls would flicker, barely noticeable at first, into something else. Smooth steel, polished tile, decaying wood. Not for long, just a blink. Like they were moving through places that didn't belong to Bridgemeyer. Or didn't belong to this version of Bridgemeyer. Jules noticed it first. Guys, she said, pausing. Look. She shone the flashlight at the wall beside her. Carvings. Thousands of tiny lines etched so lightly they could have been scratches. But Ava stepped closer and saw they weren't random. They were names. Some were full. Others cut off halfway. Some had dates. Others had nothing but initials. And one dead center was fresh. Lucas Callahan. Ava's heart stilled. Her name was carved directly beneath it. Not old. Not weathered. As if someone had just added it. She backed away. Max aimed his scanner at the wall. It pulsed once, twice, then emitted a low, sharp tone. Not static. Not the rhythm from before. A sound like feedback through water. The air grew colder. Jules gripped Ava's wrist. Do you hear that? Ava held her breath. She did. Footsteps. Not theirs. Far behind them. Slow. Dragging. They turned in unison, flashlight swinging wide. Nothing. But the footsteps didn't stop. They only got closer. They ran. Down the tunnel, deeper than they'd planned to go. The passage dipped slightly, sloping under the town like a secret artery. The walls shimmered again, steel, tile, stone, flashing between realities like a broken film reel. Then they hit a wall. Literally. It rose out of the darkness without warning, smooth, metallic, completely blocking their path. No seams. No door. No indication it should even be there. Ava pressed her hand to it. Warm. Not like metal. More like skin. Max swore under his breath. This wasn't on any map. This shouldn't even be. The footsteps stopped. Ava turned. The tunnel behind them was empty. Jules raised her flashlight. And caught it. A figure. Standing just beyond the edge of the light. Not moving. Not breathing. Ava's voice cracked. Lucas. She knew it wasn't. It looked like him, but wrong. Too still. Too symmetrical. Like someone remembered him incorrectly. The figure tilted its head slowly. Max stepped forward. Back up. Ava, move. The figure didn't chase them. It simply began to fade like smoke unraveling. Gone. The temperature dropped again. And then, the wall behind them opened. Not with sound, not with motion. It simply wasn't there anymore. Where it had been, a corridor stretched forward, dimly lit by green pulses along the floor like veins glowing in the dark. None of them spoke. They moved forward. The corridor didn't look like anything human-built. It was too smooth, too seamless. The light pulses had no source. The air felt thick, but breathable, like they were walking through the pressure of deep water. Jules ran her hand along the wall. It shimmered slightly at her touch. Max muttered, "Either this is alien tech, or we're inside the dream of a computer built by ghosts." "Less talking," Ava whispered. "More recording." They followed the lights down 2 long bends before the corridor opened into a chamber. It wasn't big, just wide enough for the 3 of them to stand shoulder to shoulder. In the center, a pedestal. On it, a small glass box. Inside the box, a folded piece of paper. Ava stepped forward and opened it. Lucas's handwriting. Again. But this time, no riddles. No clever phrasing. Just 3 words. Do not follow. Max exhaled slowly. Too late. A low hum began vibrating through the walls. Not dangerous. Not yet. But the kind of sound that preceded something being activated. Jules looked around. How do we get out? The entrance behind them, gone. In its place, a mirrored surface. Reflective. Smooth. And inside the reflection, Ava saw herself standing still. But she wasn't still. Her reflection blinked too slowly. Then smiled. Ava didn't. They slammed against the walls, looking for anything cracks, seams, weakness. Max pulled out a penlight and shined it on the mirror. It pulsed. Once. Twice. Then fractured. Not broke, fractured. Like glass with pressure behind it. Like something was pushing to come through. Ava grabbed the note and backed away. Lucas came through here, she said. This is where he crossed. Jules whispered, or where he was taken. Max turned to her. What if this isn't just a place? What if it's a junction? What kind of junction? A bleeding point. Between layers. A convergence zone. Like a throat, Ava said. They looked at her. It swallows things. Then the mirror shattered. No sound. Just motion. And a space beyond it, a tunnel, but this one dripping with light. The walls flickered between real and not. Shapes moved inside the glow, not people, but things built to resemble them. For a moment, Ava saw Lucas again. Only this time he didn't look back. He walked further into the light. Vanished. And something else stepped forward to take his place. Not a figure. A silhouette of her. Perfect. Expressionless. Waiting. Jules grabbed Ava's arm and pulled her back. The doorway collapsed again into glass. Whole. Seamless. Like nothing had happened. They were in the chamber. Just the 3 of them. Breathing too hard. Hearts out of sync. Ava clutched the note tight. Lucas wasn't leaving trails. He was leaving warnings. When they finally escaped, through a flicker in the corridor's edge that spat them back out into the mouth of the tunnel, they said nothing for a long time. The sky above Bridgemire was still gray, still quiet, but Ava swore the color had dulled even more. Like a copy of a sky. Like they hadn't come all the way back. Jules broke the silence first. We're not supposed to be in there. Max nodded. But we are. And Ava looked down at the page in her hand, the handwriting burned into her skull. Do not follow. Too late. Chapter 5. Something left open. There was something wrong with the mirrors in Bridgemire. Ava noticed it the next morning. Not in a dramatic way. Nothing cracked. No shadowy figure lurking behind her reflection. It was subtler. Colder. Her reflection blinked at the wrong time. It was just once. Fraction too slow. Like a glitch caught mid-frame. But it was enough. She backed away from the bathroom mirror, toothbrush still in hand, heart in her throat. And she wasn't the only one. By noon, whispers had started around school. 2 kids in the freshman wing said their reflections froze when they turned away. A teacher in the art room quietly covered all the wall-length mirrors with butcher paper. Max texted her during fourth period. Max, someone smashed the mirror in the A/V hall. Whole thing looked warped before it cracked. Max. Jules says she saw herself walking behind her in the lunchroom. Max. This is escalating. Ava didn't reply, because she'd already noticed something else, something worse. When she walked past the mirror near the gym staircase, her reflection wasn't alone. There was another figure behind it. Not behind her, just in the reflection. Watching. The three of them met again that night. They didn't go anywhere, not yet. They just sat in Max's garage, surrounded by static and theories and energy readings that didn't behave like they should. Jules was the first to break the silence. It's not random anymore. Max nodded. It's a pattern. Ava already knew it. The veil's adapting, she said. Or maybe it's thinning so fast it's starting to overlap. Max paced. What if it's not just us seeing into it? What if it's seeing back into us and copying what it sees? Jules didn't look up. Reflections aren't just light. They're shape, behavior, memory. What are you saying? She finally looked at them both. Her voice was calm, cold. I think it's learning. Later, Ava walked home alone. She hadn't told her mom anything. What could she say? Hey, I think the dimensional membrane over our town is dissolving and possibly replacing people with simulations? No. Her mom already lived with enough silence. The neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet. Not even the bugs were chirping. It was only when she passed the street lamp at the end of her block that she noticed something odd. The light wasn't flickering. It was breathing. A soft pulse. On, off. Slow, rhythmic, like a sleeping heartbeat. And just beneath it, Ava felt the familiar presence, the pulse of the veil. She turned to look behind her. There was no one there. But her shadow stretched the wrong direction. The next morning, Bridgemire changed. Subtly but unmistakably. People began forgetting things. Names. Days of the week. Stores that had been there yesterday were always closed. A street near the old post office disappeared from Google Maps. The librarian Ava had known since she was 5 now wore a different wedding ring and didn't remember ever being married before. Max's words came back to her. What if it's not a place behind the veil, but another version of here? They returned to the triangle. Not just metaphorically, the shape had begun appearing across Bridgemire like a signature, sprayed onto alley walls, carved into playground benches, even printed faintly into a receipt Ava got from a vending machine. They mapped every instance. The triangle wasn't symmetrical anymore. It had bent slightly, like one of the anchor points had shifted. That's when Jules brought the bad news. The old greenhouse burned down last night. Ava blinked. I thought it already was burned down. It was, but now it's burned again. Max frowned. What the hell does that even mean? They went to see it for themselves. The greenhouse, half collapsed, entangled in ivy, had somehow reignited. Fire department said it had been smoldering from the inside, like there was a second structure underneath the visible one. All that was left now was a blackened foundation, and on it, etched in the soot, the triangle. Twisted. One side fractured. Max crouched beside it, running a sensor along the ground. No seismic activity. No electromagnetic pulse. No heat signature. Ava stood still. But she knew. One of the anchor points had broken. The veil wasn't holding anymore. That night, Ava dreamed of Lucas. But not the boy she remembered. This version of him was standing at the center of Bridgemire, motionless. Everything around him bent inward, street lamps curving, houses melting at the corners, trees turned inside out. He looked up. His eyes were mirrors. And he said only one thing. You're not you anymore. Ava woke up gasping. There were scratches on her window pane. Inside. They went to the library ruins the next day, not the flower shop that replaced it, but beneath that. The town history archive still listed blueprints of the original building. They found a stairwell hidden under rotting floorboards behind the old garden beds. Jules and Max were both hesitant. Ava was not. The stairs creaked as they descended. Light flickered above them, real light this time. Not pulses. just a single bulb swinging on a wire. But it swayed too slowly, like time was thickening. At the bottom, a chamber. Different from the one in the tunnel. This one was full of broken mirrors. Some hung. Some were stacked. Some shattered into glittering fragments. All of them covered in dust and scratches. The triangle symbol was everywhere, on the walls, the glass, the floor. Ava stepped to one of the intact mirrors and wiped it clean. Her reflection looked back. But it was older. Worn. Eyes hollowed. And in the background of the reflection, Max and Jules, but wrong. Standing like mannequins. Faces blank. Max whispered, "This place, it's a crossing." Jules crouched near a cracked frame. Or a dumping ground. For versions that didn't pass through cleanly. The temperature dropped. Static clicked in Ava's ears. And for the briefest moment, she heard her own voice behind her say, "I already warned you." She spun. No one there. Only her reflection. Still smiling. They left the library ruins in silence. And when they emerged onto the street, the town was quieter than it had any right to be. No cars. No breeze. No birds. Ava looked up. The clouds weren't moving. Chapter 6, Echoes in the Familiar. The clouds didn't move for 2 days. Ava noticed it first but didn't say anything right away. Maybe part of her hoped she was wrong. But by the third morning, Jules texted her with a photo. The exact same cloud shape that had hovered above Bridgemire High since Monday, still frozen in the same patch of sky. By Wednesday, Max was running sky position algorithms on satellite data. "Clouds are locked," he said, arms folded. "And not just over us. Surrounding towns show drift patterns. We don't. We're stuck." Ava stared at the data. "We're not in our normal sky anymore." It didn't stop with the clouds. The trees around Bridgemire looked the same roots, same leaves, but they no longer rustled in the wind. Even when it did blow, they stood still like cardboard cutouts waiting for someone to animate them. Dogs stopped barking. People still walked the streets, still went to school, still laughed. But more and more of them moved like they were rehearsing being human. Expressions that didn't match words. Blinks that didn't quite sync. Ava felt it most walking past the grocery store. The cashier smiled at her. The same smile. Every time. Same angle. Same teeth. Same pause before the "have a good one." Even when she didn't buy anything. Even when she didn't go inside. Jules started carrying a knife. Not a hunting knife. Just a folded switchblade she picked up from her older cousin. She never said why and no one asked. But Ava understood. It wasn't for defense. It was for confirmation. For making sure she could still bleed. They returned to the bridge by the end of the week. The static had changed. Max's signal reader no longer emitted tones. It hummed low, like something pressing up against the world just beneath them. The symbol on the concrete wall had cracked wider. At its center, the triangle now pulsed softly like it had a heartbeat. Max crouched beside it, placing his hand flat over the fracture. He closed his eyes and spoke in a voice that didn't quite sound like his own. "There are 3 of you, but only one will remain." He blinked. The voice was gone. He looked up at the other 2, pale and shaking. "I didn't say that." They didn't speak on the walk back. Not about the voice. Not about the symbol. Not even about Lucas. But something had changed in how they looked at each other now. There was doubt where there hadn't been before. Not about the mystery. About each other. That night, Ava dreamed again. She was standing in the school auditorium, alone, but heard applause echoing all around her. On stage was herself. Smiling. Wearing clothes she didn't own. Holding Lucas's notebook like a trophy. Behind her, Max and Jules. Also smiling. Also different. The auditorium faded into darkness. And Ava felt herself forgetting her own name. She woke with a scream lodged in her throat. The window was open. She hadn't left it open. And on the glass, a fingerprint. On the inside. She called Max and Jules before the sun rose. They met her at the abandoned greenhouse ruins. The air was thicker here. Not humid heavy, like it had been pressurized. Max paced as he scanned for signals, frustration mounting. There's something we're not seeing. Something beneath all of this. You mean besides the obvious? Jules muttered. Besides the sky glitching and the town going full NPC mode? No, Ava said. He's right. Something's missing. She reached into her jacket, pulling out Lucas's notebook again. So many pages filled with thoughts, maps, observations. But one page stood out this time, one she didn't remember ever reading. It was a sketch of the town, overlaid with lines, some marked with triangles, others marked with XS. In the center of the map, between all of it, was a shaded circle labeled only. The Fold. Beneath it, Lucas had written, "It's not another world. It's a second skin. It doesn't open, it peels." Max's voice dropped. Ava, the fractures in the veil aren't openings. They're overlay points. Places where this second skin is pressing harder. Jules looked at the ruins. So what happens when it breaks through completely? Max didn't answer. But Ava already knew. It replaces everything it touches. They split up that afternoon. Not because they wanted to. Because they had to. Each of the 3 marked sites on the triangle, now beginning to bend inward, needed to be checked, remeasured, remapped. There was no time to waste. Ava returned to the train tunnel. It was different now. The mouth of it looked deeper somehow, like it had inhaled something since the last time she stood there. Her footsteps echoed now, but in reverse. Every step forward was met with the preceding step behind her. Still she pressed in. She found the same corridor. Same walls. Same pulsing lights. But the chamber at the end? Gone. In its place, a mirror. One she recognized. It was from her house. Her bedroom mirror. It stood in the tunnel like it had always been there. And in it, her reflection looked exactly like her. Except it had no eyes. Max wasn't doing much better. At the burned greenhouse, he picked up a faint transmission, a loop of Jules's voice over and over. But she wasn't speaking anywhere nearby. And the words weren't anything she'd said before. You have to let one of us go. You have to decide. He tried to shut off the receiver. It wouldn't turn off. He smashed it. The voice kept playing. Jules didn't find signals. She found copies. In the woods near the old water tower, she saw a second Max and Ava walking side by side, their backs to her. She followed, shaking. They never turned. She reached for her phone to take a picture. It buzzed, and both copies vanished. No sound, no fade, just gone. By nightfall, they met again. Silent, wired, exhausted. They didn't have to say what they'd seen. The triangle wasn't just bending. It was closing in. And they were no longer sure which version of each other they were speaking to anymore. Chapter 7, the third version. The next morning, Bridgemeyer woke up, rearranged. Not dramatically, just wrong enough. Street signs spelled backwards. Storefronts in a different order. The church tower rang twice at 6:13 a.m., then stopped entirely. Some houses had extra windows that weren't there the night before. Others had none at all. Max described it best. Like the town rolled over in its sleep and forgot what shape it was. Ava couldn't find her bedroom mirror. Not broken. Gone. She ran her hand across the blank wall, unsure what disturbed her more. That it was missing, or that she wasn't sure if it had ever been there to begin with. Downstairs, her mom didn't say good morning. Just stared at her with eyes too still, like someone waiting for a prompt. Ava left the house without eating. She didn't feel hungry anyway. Jules hadn't slept. Not because she didn't want to, because she couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw herself walking up to her bed. Not a dream. Not a hallucination. Her. Smiling. Patient. And always closer than the night before. When she checked the front door at dawn, it was unlocked. She never leaves it unlocked. Max sent one message that morning. Max. Meet me at the library ruins. Something's waiting. They didn't question it. They just went. The tunnel beneath the flower shop hadn't collapsed like it should have. Instead, it had grown longer. The stairs descended farther. At the bottom, the mirror chamber had changed again. Now there were 3 mirrors in the center of the room, each one tall, freestanding, and covered by a thin black sheet. Max stood in the center, motionless, arms crossed. He looked exhausted, his face pale, his hands shaking. "Before I show you this," he said, "you need to promise me you'll stay calm." Jules glanced at Ava. Ava didn't promise anything. Max peeled the cover off the first mirror. The reflection showed them standing together, but with one difference. In the mirror, Jules was gone. Vanished. No trace of her. The second mirror showed the same room, same trio, but Max was missing. The third? Ava. She stared at her absence like it was a question mark that had learned how to breathe. Jules spoke first. "What are these?" "Versions," Max whispered. "Timelines. Possibilities. Why show us this?" He took a shaky breath. "Because last night I found a journal. Mine. From another version. It was tucked under the floorboards of my room. And in it." He pulled it from his bag and opened to a dog-eared page. "Only one anchor survives. When the veil fully peels, the world beneath will overwrite the one above. If all 3 remain, the fold collapses into chaos. If one is sacrificed, the new layer stabilizes." Ava's voice was barely audible. "So we have to choose?" "I don't know." Max looked at them both, guilt burning behind his eyes. "But I think the veil's going to make the choice for us if we don't." They left the ruins without speaking. They didn't go home. They didn't split up. Instead, they walked the streets of Bridgemire together in silence, watching as the town peeled further from itself. Cars parked in the middle of the road without drivers. A second sun rising for a moment behind the hills before blinking out. A missing child flyer taped to every lamppost with no name, only a blank space where it should have been. No one around them reacted. Not even the mailman, who delivered letters addressed to buildings that didn't exist. The town was folding. And inside the fold, identity was becoming fluid. That evening, the 3 of them gathered at Ava's house, one of the few places that hadn't yet visibly changed. They sat in the attic with Lucas's notebook, Jules's maps, and Max's scavenged gear spread between them. No music. No lights. Just tension, low and buzzing. Jules finally said it. "We need to test the mirrors." Max blinked. "Test how?" "I want to know if the versions we saw are real. If there's a place where I'm already gone. Or Max. Or Ava." Ava stared at the 3 mirrors Max had reassembled in the attic. "I think we're already inside one of those versions." Max nodded slowly. "Which means someone isn't real." That sentence hung in the air longer than anything else that night. They tested everything they could think of. Personal memories only one person should know. Physical tics. Favorite songs, obscure inside jokes, shared scars. Nothing proved anything. Everyone passed every test. Which only made it worse. Because either the veil was flawless at imitation now, or it had already begun rewriting the originals. Later that night, Ava stepped into the hallway for air. She didn't turn on any lights. She didn't need to, because as she passed the hall mirror, she saw herself again. But this time the reflection reached out. Its hand pressed through the glass. Just barely. Only for a second. But it was enough. Because Ava's shoulder burned. She ran back into the attic wide-eyed. "There's a 4th version." Max blinked. "What?" "There were 3 mirrors. One for each of us. But there's a 4th version, one not bound by choice. One that's been watching, waiting for one of us to fracture." Jules's face was pale. "An echo form." "No," Ava whispered. "Something worse. An observer." Max exhaled. "If it can step through." Jules finished for him. "Then it can replace." They didn't sleep that night. They took turns watching the mirrors. Every few hours, one would shimmer. Not visibly. Emotionally. Like standing too close to a screen that wasn't tuned quite right. Jules stared into one of them for too long. Ava had to pull her back. "You were starting to fade." Jules looked dizzy. "I felt like I remembered things I've never lived." Max sat down hard beside them. We're losing time. At 3:11 a.m., every mirror cracked. Simultaneously, just one thin fracture down the center of each. The same direction. The same angle. Like they'd been cut. And Ava knew then. The veil wasn't going to wait for a choice. It was already choosing. Chapter 8, The Ones Who Forget. No one in Bridgemire remembered Lucas Callahan anymore. Ava didn't mean to test it, it just happened. A passing conversation with a teacher. A photo on a wall. A list of honor roll students where his name used to sit. All of it blank. Missing. Even his mother. She stood at the mailbox on Saturday morning, humming to herself. Ava approached slowly. "Hi, Mrs. Callahan," she said, her voice careful. The woman blinked. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" Ava's chest tightened. "It's me, Ava. I used to your son, Lucas." Mrs. Callahan's expression didn't change. "I don't have a son." She smiled, turned, and walked back inside. Ava didn't cry. She ran. Not home. Not to Max's. Just ran, legs burning against the cold concrete until the numbness overtook her thoughts. The town blurred around her. Every turn looked like the last. Streets repeated. Houses mirrored each other like copy-paste errors. Bridgemire had started looping. She met Max and Jules that night at the school. It wasn't planned, but they all showed up. None of them had said it out loud yet, but they'd started sensing where the others would go. Like their paths were being magnetized toward each other, a side effect of the veil pulling tight around them. Jules stared at the old trophy case in the main hallway. Some of the glass had cracked. The trophies inside were blurred, melted, almost like they were mid-glitch. Max held a notebook in one hand. Not his. Lucas's. He didn't explain how he got it. Just flipped to a torn page near the back. When people vanish, they're not removed. They're overwritten. What you see instead is a soft patch, something wearing their face. Most of the time, it doesn't know what it is. That's the danger. Some of them don't remember their copies. The school's reflections were worse at night. Every window, every trophy, every gloss floor tile, all of them catching moments the eye shouldn't be able to see. Jules stopped in front of a hallway mirror. "I think I saw myself yesterday," she said quietly, walking across the soccer field. Same hair, same coat, but I was smiling. Max looked at her. "You're saying it wasn't you?" "I'm saying I don't remember doing it. And that scares me more." They gathered in the auditorium where Ava's dream had taken place. It looked normal at first. But the moment they stepped inside, the air shifted. Sound fell away. The lights flickered once, then held steady in a shade too cold to be real. On stage, a mirror. They didn't bring it. It was just there, waiting. They approached as one. Their reflection stood still, then blinked. Out of sync. Ava's stomach dropped. It's happening again. But this time was different. This time, the mirror spoke. 3 voices, distorted, layered over each other, echoed from its surface. One must be forgotten. One must fracture. One must remain. Jules stepped back. No, we're not playing its game." Max didn't move. Ava whispered, "I think we already are." The mirror showed them new scenes. Ava standing over a cracked version of herself, blood on her hands. Jules wandering empty streets while the sky above watched her. Max holding a second Ava's hand in a library that shouldn't exist. None of the reflections made sense, but all of them felt real. Not the future, not the past, just possibilities, waiting to be chosen. Max turned away. "I need air." He walked out of the auditorium and into the empty hallway. Jules followed. Ava stayed behind. The mirror pulsed once more. Softly, like it knew she wasn't done. In its surface, she saw not herself, but Lucas, standing just behind her. She turned. Nothing. But when she looked back, he was still there, smiling. And then, "You're not the one who breaks it. You're the one it breaks through." The mirror shattered. No impact. No sound. Just exploded into silver dust. Ava staggered back, and in the dark beneath the stage, something began to move. Not fast, just awake. They regrouped outside. Max's hands were shaking. Jules wouldn't stop checking over her shoulder. Ava didn't say what she'd seen. She didn't need to. They could feel it radiating off her. That something had changed. That she was carrying something now. A ripple. A seed. A fracture. Back at Max's garage, they locked the doors, sealed the windows, turned off all the mirrors and screens. Jules pulled out a whiteboard and began sketching. "We need to map it," she said. Max nodded, already pacing. Ava didn't move. She stared at Lucas's notebook, open to a final page she hadn't dared to read before. She read it now. The observer is not a thing. It is the memory of the thing that replaced you. It does not kill. It erases. The longer you look at it, the more it looks like you. She turned the page. Blank. But at the bottom corner, a new message had begun to write itself, as if invisible ink had been set in motion by time. One word. Soon. Chapter 9, The Copy Knows. Ava didn't remember falling asleep. But when she woke up, her hand was smeared with ink. Lucas's notebook sat open beside her, pages she hadn't touched now covered in messy, slanted handwriting. Not hers. "I'm sorry. I didn't know it would follow me here. If you're reading this, it's already picked one of you. They won't know. You might not either." The ink on the final line was still wet. "Fitz, you run." The mirror in Max's garage was covered. They duct-taped black trash bags over it, sealed every reflective surface with cloth, even turned off their phones. The screens had started flickering again, only in peripheral vision, only for a second, but it was enough. Jules hadn't slept either. She stared out the slatted garage window at nothing, her jaw clenched, foot bouncing. Max was adjusting his makeshift scanner again. He hadn't spoken in over an hour, just muttering numbers under his breath and shaking his head. Ava finally broke the silence. "We have to ask the question." Max looked up. Jules didn't move. "What question?" Max asked, though he already knew. Ava's voice was flat. "Which one of us has already been replaced?" They took turns answering. Ava said it wasn't her, that she remembered everything, could describe each moment of the last week, each version of Lucas's voice in her dreams. Jules argued that was exactly what a copy would say. Max snapped back. "We don't know how it works. Maybe none of us are real. Maybe all of us are, and the observer just wants us to fracture from the inside." "I'm not a copy," Jules said through her teeth. Neither was Max. Neither was Ava. But they couldn't prove it. And that was the trap. Ava stepped outside. Bridgemeyer had changed again. More subtle distortions this time. Stop signs rotated upside down. Store names spelled backwards but spoken normally by the people inside. The sky stayed the same blue-gray no matter what time it was. She passed the playground and saw a version of herself on the swings. For just a second. Then it was gone. Back in the garage, Jules finally snapped. "I saw you talking to someone in the library 2 days ago," she said, pointing at Ava. "You were whispering. You were smiling. But there was no one there." Ava blinked. "What are you talking about?" "I watched you. You were saying things. Repeating them. I couldn't hear it, but oh." Max held up a hand. "We're spiraling." "No," Jules said. "We're breaking." She stepped forward, eyes wide. "I want to know if either of you would tell me. If you were a copy, would you admit it?" Silence. That was the answer. That night, they did something desperate. They returned to the place it all started. The triangle. The tunnel. The chamber. It had changed again. The walls no longer pulsed. They breathed. The triangle on the floor had folded inward entirely, no longer a symbol, but a deep gouge in the concrete. In the center, a mirror. Not upright. Lying flat. Like a portal. Max stared at it. "I think this is it." "The fold," Jules whispered. "No," Ava said. She crouched beside it. "The reflection isn't showing this room." They looked closer. It wasn't. It was showing Ava's bedroom. But not as it was. As it had been. Before her mirror disappeared. Before Lucas vanished. Before anything broke, they should have walked away. But Ava reached toward it. Her fingers touched the glass and sank in like water. She gasped and pulled back, staring at her hand. It was wet. No mirror should feel like that. Jules stepped forward. I saw something, just for a second. A shape behind Ava's bed, watching. A version of her, smiling. They didn't sleep that night. Instead, they turned on each other quietly, carefully. Jules began asking questions she already knew the answers to. Ava noticed Max double-checking his bag every time she left the room. Max began writing timestamps for everything he did, when he blinked, when he spoke, when he thought. They weren't fighting. They were trying to prove they were human. But even that wasn't enough, because the veil didn't need to make them copies. It just needed them to believe each other were. The next morning, Jules was gone. Not missing, just absent. No note, no texts. Her house was exactly the same. Her bedroom untouched. Her phone still charging. Her bed still warm. Her parents didn't remember her. Not even a flicker. Just blank smiles. Empty nods. Max stood in the street outside her house, pale and shaking. She was real. Ava didn't respond. She wasn't sure anymore. That night, Ava dreamed again. She was back in the mirror chamber. Only this time the mirror was gone, replaced by a door. On the other side, whispering, Lucas's voice, calling her, begging her, don't open it. She stepped closer anyway. The whispering changed, turned into her own voice. You already did. She woke with blood on her hand. A single fingerprint burned into her palm. Not hers. Chapter 10. Only What Remains. Ava sat in Jules's empty room for almost 2 hours. It was still warm, lived in. Clothes in a pile by the chair, a sketchbook half filled on the floor, a charger dangling beside the bed like someone had just stepped out for a moment. But no one was coming back. The world didn't feel hollow, it felt rewritten. Even Max hadn't answered her last 2 texts. Her phone vibrated randomly now. Notifications that disappeared when she tapped them. Apps in the wrong order. Her lock screen kept changing to photos she didn't take. One of them was of Lucas, smiling, standing outside a store that didn't exist anymore. That night, Bridgemeyer turned inside out. Not literally. Not yet. But signs of collapse were everywhere. Mailboxes filled with teeth instead of letters. Street lamps flickering Morse code in a dead language. A single looping announcement from the town's PA system. This is the final version. Accept, adapt, obey. People didn't notice. They just moved through it, as if the changes had always been there. A neighbor Ava had known since 2nd grade greeted her by the wrong name, Morgan. A teacher taught class facing the chalkboard the whole hour, never turning once. Something was rewriting their context. Ava found Max at the greenhouse ruins again. He was digging. Not wildly, methodically. He'd uncovered part of what looked like an old hatch beneath the blackened floorboards. He looked up when she approached. She's not gone, he said. Ava nodded, unsure if he meant Jules or someone else. I found this, he said, pulling something from his jacket. It was a small mirror shard, curved, like part of a hand mirror. The edges were dull, but the reflection was wrong, a half-second delay, like it was trying to catch up. Max looked at it for too long. And in that second, Ava saw something behind him. A shape. Watching. Just outside the greenhouse. When she blinked, it was gone. They climbed down into the hatch together. What they found wasn't a basement. It was a corridor. Narrow. Impossible. Like a maintenance tunnel for a town that didn't exist. The air inside was warm and rhythmic, like being inside a throat. And the walls weren't made of metal or stone. They were mirrored. Not polished, veined, and cloudy. Almost organic. They didn't speak. Every word felt dangerous. The tunnel opened into a chamber. Not the triangle. This one was round. And at its center stood a figure. Face down. Still. Hands folded over a book. Lucas. Ava broke. She ran to him, dropping to her knees, shaking him by the shoulders. He didn't move. He was cold, but not dead. He was paused, like someone had hit a button and forgotten to press play again. His eyes opened, and Ava gasped. They weren't eyes. They were mirrors. He blinked. Reflections shifted. And when he spoke, it was in a whisper made of 3 voices. They replaced me wrong. They couldn't decide which version I was. So I became all of them. Max stepped back. We shouldn't be here. Ava held Lucas's face in her hands, trying to find some version of him beneath the echo. Are you real? He looked at her. And for a moment, just one moment, his reflection turned normal. His voice dropped to a whisper. I remembered you. That's how I know I'm still me. The walls of the chamber began to tremble. The mirrors rippled. Something behind them shifted, like a tide rolling just beneath the surface. Max pulled Ava away. Lucas didn't follow. He didn't move again. Ava screamed at him. Begged. He didn't blink. Didn't breathe. He had been granted memory. But not freedom. They ran. Back through the tunnel. Up into the greenhouse. Back into a town that had already forgotten them. Because the moment they stepped outside, Max's phone buzzed. He looked down. Paled. What is it? Ava asked. He turned the screen toward her. It was a local news notification. Jules Moreno, missing since 2005. Her name. Her photo. But the date was wrong. Ava stared at it. That's not possible. Max shook his head. We're being pulled backward. The veil is collapsing, not just space but time. It's rewriting the history of this place to match the version it wants. Which is what? Ava asked. Max looked up at the sky, then at her, then at his own reflection in a nearby store window. It didn't move, didn't blink, didn't mimic him, just watched. He said nothing. That night, Ava didn't go home. She wandered. The streets of Bridgemire blurred into silence. Lights buzzed without power. Reflections watched from puddles. No one noticed her. Until a girl stepped into her path. 13 maybe. Eyes too wide. Hair like Ava's. But it wasn't Ava. It was another version of her. The girl tilted her head. You're late, she said. For what? The girl smiled. And pointed. A mirror stood in the middle of the road. Upright. Alone. Fractured. Ava stepped closer. In its surface she saw herself standing over Max's body. Jules's face fading like fog. Lucas smiling, but with Ava's voice coming from his mouth. She turned away, but the mirror called to her. And in its surface, a final word pulsed across the crack. Accept. Chapter 11. I remember you differently. Bridgemire was colder now. Not weather cold. Memory cold. People still moved, spoke, smiled, but Ava noticed it more clearly now. The hollowness. Like watching actors who didn't know the roles they were pretending to play. Like they had read a script with all the lines but none of the meaning. Max didn't speak much anymore. Since they'd seen Lucas, that version of Lucas, something in him had changed. He'd started writing symbols in a notebook he never let Ava read. Sketching spirals and cracks and repeating the phrase, sing point, under his breath. She gave him space. Because part of her was afraid of what he'd say if she didn't. That morning, Ava stood in front of a mirror. Not to look at herself. To listen. Sometimes the mirror whispered. Sometimes it just felt like it wanted to. She pressed her palm against the glass. Her reflection didn't follow. It stared. Expressionless. Then blinked. Out of sync. She found a map Jules had drawn before she vanished. It was more of a pattern than a layout, lines connecting strange symbols. Triangles, circles, diagonal slashes. All intersecting over the word. Anchor. In the corner, Jules had written. The fold doesn't open like a gate. It syncs with belief. The more you believe what you see, the more real it becomes. Ava stared at that line for a long time. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't sure what she believed anymore. Max suggested a test. He wanted to recreate the triangle chamber in a sealed location, a controlled version, something mirrored, something contained, to see if they could trap an echo form, or an observer, or something else. They broke into the old town hall. It had been condemned for years, but inside the structure was still intact. 3 levels, a central atrium, and high vaulted windows. Max called it a mirror cage. Ava just called it dangerous. They set it up over 2 nights. 3 mirror panels, 1 in each corner of the atrium, lights rigged to reflect continuously across their surfaces. A speaker system looping audio they'd recorded from Lucas's voice in the chamber. Max kept muttering that repetition is what brings it close. Ava began hearing her name in the static. On the 3rd night, something happened. Ava stood alone in the center of the triangle. Max watched from the balcony. The audio loop began. I remember you. I remember you. I remember you. The mirrors pulsed. Her reflection fractured. Not cracked, split. In each panel, she saw a different Ava. One smiling with blood on her hands. One sobbing in a hallway Ava had never seen. One standing beside Lucas, laughing. None of them matched her. All of them felt like her. Then the lights went out. Not failed. Pulled. The darkness that followed wasn't empty. It was aware. Ava felt something rise behind her. Slow. Careful. Cold. She turned and saw herself. Not another Ava. Perfected one. Hair neater. Posture straighter. Voice steadier. The Ava she could have been. The one who made all the right choices. She spoke in Ava's own voice. You're the fracture. I'm the version that holds. You're going to collapse. Ava screamed. The mirrors burst inward. Max rushed down from the balcony, but she was already on the floor, gasping. Her skin burned where the reflection had touched her. And the phrase from Lucas's notebook came flooding back. It doesn't kill. It erases. They escaped the hall just before dawn. Ava limped, dazed. Max didn't speak. He just handed her a photo. She blinked at it. It was a picture of her and Jules. Taken years ago. But her own face was blurred. Only Jules remained clear. Max had found it in a box in his attic. Your presence is fading from our past. Ava stared at it. What happens when it finishes? Max's silence was the answer. They hid in the old planetarium. The only place left in Bridgemire that didn't seem aware of them. Its dome still projected stars that didn't exist anymore. Constellations that had long since been erased by the fold. The speaker system buzzed faintly with a static rhythm, like a heartbeat. Ava stared up. Max sat beside her. Do you trust me? She asked. He nodded. Too fast. Too shallow. Max. He met her gaze. And his eyes shimmered. Mirrored. Ava's breath caught. Say something only Max would know. He opened his mouth. Paused. And whispered. You never told Jules the truth about the fire. You let her think it was the candles. But it wasn't. You knocked it over. She froze. That was true. And she'd never said it out loud. Not to anyone. Not even Max. He smiled. But the smile was too perfect. Too symmetrical. She backed away. Heart racing. Max didn't move. Didn't stop her. Didn't try to explain. He just said, you should be careful who you remember. They might remember you better than you remember yourself. Ava ran. Out of the planetarium. Into the empty streets. She didn't stop until she reached the school. Not because it was safe. Because it was the last place she remembered being happy. Even if that memory was fake now. Even if it was someone else's. She stepped into the gymnasium and screamed. Not from fear. From anger. And every reflective surface, every trophy, every window, every flicker of a polished floor. Shattered. Chapter 12. The version you choose. Ava didn't know how long she'd been walking. The mirrors at the school hadn't just shattered, they bled. Thin streams of mercury pooled at her feet before vanishing into the floor like ink absorbed by paper. When she turned around, her reflection had been missing. Not broken. Gone. She found the old bus depot by accident. A dead-end corner of Bridgemire that hadn't been used in years. The windows were boarded. The pavement cracked. The only light came from a flickering street lamp that buzzed without power. Inside, the schedule board still read, "All departures canceled." The benches were covered in dust, but not empty. One person sat in the corner, hood up, hands in their lap. Still. Too still. Ava approached slowly. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe, until she got close enough to see the patch on the jacket. Jules's jacket. Ava fell to her knees. Jules? No answer. She reached out, touched the shoulder. Warm. Alive. The figure blinked, then looked at her. The face was almost right. But the eyes? Ava's. The version in the jacket tilted her head and whispered, "I've been waiting for you to forget me." Ava stepped back. The copy rose to its feet. The jacket shifted. Its sleeves were too long now. The patch read, Jul 5. Like someone had tried to stitch Jules back together from memory. And failed. The copy walked past her. Slow. Dripping. With each step, the room changed. The windows began to reflect a brighter version of Bridgemire, sunny, clean, smiling people passing by. But the people in those windows all looked the same. All had Ava's face. And every one of them turned to look at her as she passed. She ran. She found Max in the library. Or what was left of it. Half the building had been absorbed by the fold, the walls folded into each other, books melted into their shelves. The smell of paper was sharp, wet, metallic. Max stood at the center barefoot, wearing a shirt Ava didn't recognize. She froze. Max. He looked up. Do you remember the first time you lied to me? The question hit her like a slap. I don't what? The bonfire. 8th grade. You said it wasn't you who told Jules about my mom. Ava's stomach sank. That wasn't a lie. Max didn't blink. The fold remembers it differently. He stepped closer. The light in his eyes was dim, murky. Are you the Ava who let Lucas fall? Or the one who tried to catch him? I didn't let. Are you the Ava who burned the journal or the one who read it and forgot? Her voice trembled. Max, stop. He stepped even closer. Are you the Ava who dies in the end or the one who replaces herself? The room spun. Reality shifted. Ava stumbled back, hit a bookshelf that collapsed into water. The floor fell away beneath her. She didn't scream. She sank. She woke up underground. In the mirror chamber. The original one. Triangle intact. But this time only one mirror stood in the center. No frame. Just a wall of perfect glass. She approached it. Inside, not her. Lucas. But younger. Happier. Before the fold touched him. Before he fractured. He looked at her through the glass. And whispered. You never really knew me. Only the version your guilt made. So the veil built what you believed. Ava's hand trembled. What do you want from me? Lucas pressed a hand to the glass. And then softly. Choose. Me or you. The mirror darkened. The voice changed. Now it was hers. Let him go. He's not real anymore. Another voice. Keep him. If you remember him, he lives. Another. Replace him. Be someone who never lost anything. The mirror cracked once down the middle. Ava closed her eyes. Thought of Jules's laugh at the diner. Max's notebooks always half erased. Lucas's hand reaching for hers in the tunnel. Her hand shook. She touched the mirror. And whispered. I choose the version that hurts. Because it's the only one that meant anything. The mirror shattered. Light poured out of the crack, sharp and golden. The fold screamed. Not a sound. A pressure. Like the sky turned inside out. And then, silence. Ava opened her eyes. She was standing in the greenhouse again. Max was beside her. Breathing. Alive. But different. He looked at her, expression blank. I had a dream, he said. You were gone. She smiled faintly. You always say that. Max blinked and didn't respond. Back at her house, everything looked normal. Too normal. The mirror in her room had returned. Clean. Polished. Perfect. She stood in front of it. Looked at herself. Waited. Nothing. No flicker. No distortion. Only her. Only. She leaned closer. The reflection didn't follow. Not immediately. Just a half-second behind. Enough to make her whisper. Not yet. Chapter 13. Sink loss detected. The sun rose over Bridgemire. But the light was wrong. It didn't warm the sidewalks or filter through windows like it used to. It painted the town in a perfect gradient, sharp, unnatural, too clean. People moved like normal. They laughed. Opened shops. Watered gardens. But none of them cast shadows. Ava stood in her bedroom, watching her mirror. Still one beat behind her. Still pretending. She raised her hand. The reflection followed. Too late. She whispered. You're not going to hide anymore, are you? It blinked. Out of sync. And then smiled. She met Max at the diner. The same booth. But the waitress didn't recognize them. Even though Ava had seen her every Saturday for years. Her name tag now read Mira. Ava couldn't remember what it used to say. Mira refilled their coffees, smiling too long. When she walked away, Max leaned in. I saw Jules again. Ava's chest tightened. Where? In the mirror behind the counter. Ava glanced. Only their reflections. Just the two of them. But Max was pale. She waved, he whispered. Then she pointed at you. The town wasn't just strange anymore. It was turning. Signs had started changing. Stoplights blinking purple. Billboards showing messages Ava couldn't understand. A new shop appeared where the ice cream parlor used to be, one with no door, no windows, just a flickering neon sign that read, You are the error. People didn't notice. Or maybe they did. And just forgot. Back at the school, Ava and Max searched for anything that still resembled truth. They broke into the AV room, powered up an old reel projector. No electricity needed. It had been untouched by the fold. Analog. Untethered. The footage was grainy. Bridgemire, 1997. A school play. Blurry students on a stage. And then Lucas. Younger. Wearing the same outfit he wore when he vanished. But beside him was someone else. A girl. Same age. Familiar posture. Ava leaned closer. No. Because it was her. But younger. And smiling. A scene she didn't remember. A memory she'd never lived. Max backed away. They've been stitching us into the past. Ava turned toward him. Why? He didn't answer. Because behind her, the screen changed again. Now showing Jules walking through the library in 2010. Max standing alone on the bridge in 2015. Ava in her room last night. But from the mirror's perspective. It wasn't surveillance. It was ownership. The projector began to smoke. Ava yanked the plug. The footage lingered for a second. Then melted into mirror glass, reflecting their shocked faces. Outside, Bridgemire had stopped moving. People were frozen mid-stride. Birds hung motionless in the sky. Time hadn't stopped. Sync had failed. The veil was rejecting the inconsistencies. Ava was the greatest one. They ran to the fold's origin point, the tunnel. But it had changed again. Now a staircase spiraling downward, impossibly deep. They descended. Deeper than they'd ever gone. Lights pulsed on the walls. Each one showing a reflection, not of them but versions. Ava walking hand in hand with Jules in a future that never happened. Max screaming into a mirror while no sound came out. Lucas alone burning pages in a room made of fog. The stairs ended in a door. It was labeled. Local route anchor. Ava Sinclair. Max reached out to touch it. Ava grabbed his wrist. No. He looked at her. You don't have to go in alone. Ava didn't respond. Because she knew something he didn't. She could feel it now. He wasn't real anymore. Not entirely. Just good enough to get her to the door. She stepped inside. The room was empty. Except for one thing. A mirror. But not like the others. This one was alive. It pulsed, breathing with the rhythm of her own chest. And in it, every version of Ava she had ever imagined. Ava who never let Lucas fall. Ava who kissed Jules. Ava who burned the notebook. Ava who never existed. They all stared at her. Some crying. Some smiling. Some already fading. Then, choose. Only one version remains. All others must dissolve. Ava stepped forward. She pressed her palm to the mirror. She thought of the truth, the pain, the love, the loss, and then she said, I choose the Ava who remembers. Even when it hurts. The mirror cracked. Not shattered. Cracked. From top to bottom. A spider web of defiance. And then, the fold screamed. Reality snapped. Ava fell to her knees as a flood of sound, light, and forgotten truths poured through her. She saw everything. Every version. Every rewrite. Every false memory. She saw who Max used to be. Who Jules almost became. She saw the observer. Not as a creature, but as a system. A construct. Programmed not to kill, but to correct. She wasn't its enemy. She was its error. The town exploded into silence. And then, reset. Ava opened her eyes. Morning light. Birdsong. Bridgemeyer was normal. Too normal. The kind of normal that waits. She stood alone in the center of Main Street. No one around. No footsteps. No voices. No sound. Except one. Behind her. A whisper. Her own. Sync loss detected. Chapter 14, The Town That Waits. Bridgemeyer was still. Not frozen. Just waiting. The sun hung too long at the same angle in the sky. Shadows never moved. The clouds passed overhead in perfect symmetry, looping every 30 minutes. If you stared long enough, you could catch the cycle repeating. Ava had been walking for hours. No people. No wind. Just a version of the town that remembered her, but only in echoes. The billboard outside the school still displayed her name. Ava Sinclair, Senior of the month October. But it was July, and she had never been chosen. Not once. She wandered into the library. It smelled like nothing. Not old books. Not dust. Just absence. Her steps echoed too loud. The world had no background noise now, like it had run out of sound files. Even her heartbeat felt quieter. At the front desk, a nameplate sat crooked. Jewel 5 Moreno. Ava reached for it. But it disintegrated before her fingers touched it. She found Max in the science wing. Not her Max. One of the others. This version wore glasses. Spoke slower. Had scars on his palms and a slight tremor in his left hand. He didn't flinch when she entered the room. Ava. You know me. Not this one, he said, smiling faintly. But you're consistent. She swallowed hard. Is this Bridgemeyer? He considered. No. It's what's left when Bridgemeyer stops resisting. He gestured at the window. Outside, everything was still locked in the golden loop. The fold doesn't destroy. It consolidates. It keeps the parts that work, rewrites the rest. And the people? They dissolve. Or get reassigned. Or rewritten. He nodded. Ava sat down. Her limbs felt heavy, like she'd been dragged underwater and only just surfaced. I chose to remember, she said quietly. I know, the alternate Max replied. That's why you're still here. Why you're visible. He handed her a sheet of paper. It was a hand-drawn diagram. An anchor map. At the center, Ava Sinclair at the edges. Names she recognized. Jules. Max. Lucas. And others she didn't. Sarah Lane. Eli Ward. Nico Young. Who are they? Ava asked. Other anchors. Other errors. Other survivors. Some didn't make it. Some are still resisting. Her eyes caught a name near the bottom. Noah Sinclair. She paused. Is that another version of you? Max said softly. From another node. Another world. He opened a drawer. Inside, a cracked mirror. A handheld one. Familiar. Lucas's. You're not the only one the fold tried to fix. Ava picked it up. Its reflection was off again, but only slightly. She whispered, what happens if I break it? You isolate yourself, Max said. The fold will treat you like a corrupted file. It won't try to rewrite you anymore. Ava blinked. So I'll be safe? No, he said. You'll be forgotten. She left the mirror behind. Outside, Bridgemeyer's loop started to glitch. This time she noticed. The same couple passed her twice, 5 seconds apart. A crow froze mid-flight, then reversed direction. Her phone kept vibrating even though the battery read 0%. She turned onto Willow Lane. Her childhood street. Every house was locked in a moment. Mr. Raleigh mowing a lawn that never shrank. A sprinkler spraying in a perfect figure 8. Her old dog barking at a squirrel that never moved. Her own house was gone. Just grass. No foundation. No rubble. As if it had been skipped. Ava dropped to her knees. Tears finally came, unfiltered. Not because she was afraid, but because she was the only one left to remember. Until footsteps. Behind her. Slow. Rhythmic. Measured. She turned. It wasn't Max. Wasn't Jules. It was a woman in a dark coat, face half hidden in the hood. Ava stood, cautious. The woman stopped 10 feet away. Ava Sinclair, she said. Her voice echoed oddly, layered like multiple tones stacked imperfectly. Ava didn't reply. You've resisted beyond your designated collapse point. Ava narrowed her eyes. Are you the observer? The woman smiled faintly. No. The observer was retired. You proved immune to its models. Then who are you? She stepped forward. And when she lowered her hood, Ava saw herself. Older. Calm. Polished. The perfected version. You're a threat to sync stability, she said. But we've run the simulations. We can't erase you. Why not? Because you've been chosen. Ava froze. By who? By them. The woman pointed upward. Ava looked. And saw for a fraction of a second the stars rearranging above her. Not naturally. Not randomly. Like code. Written across the night. And then. Gone. The woman stepped closer. You were always an anchor. That was never in question. But now you're also something else. What? The smile faded. A portal. Chapter 15, The First Error. The perfected version of Ava, the woman in the coat, stood without blinking. Not cruel. Not mechanical. Just still. You're the anchor and the exit, she said. You destabilize systems. You rupture containment. You create passage. Ava's breath came shallow. Why me? The woman tilted her head. Because you remember. The streets around them began to pixel, not visibly, not digitally, but structurally. Buildings no longer had backs. Trees became flat when Ava looked away. The air shimmered like heat over pavement, except it was cold. The woman stepped aside. Behind her was a doorway. Not built. Not carved. Manifested. A shape torn out of the world. A slice in the fabric of this Bridgemeyer. Inside was not blackness. It was stars. But wrong. Too close. Too ordered. Like they were watching. Ava's voice shook. What's on the other side? The woman gave no answer. Instead, she reached into her coat and withdrew a folded piece of paper. She handed it to Ava. On it was a name. Noah Sinclair. Beneath that, system//6 are fold//recovery pending. And beneath that, match status true. Ava's vision blurred. Not from tears. From overlap. She saw 2 sets of hands. 2 bodies. 2 shadows. 2 versions of herself standing in the same spot, nearly aligned. A moment later, the other shadow was gone. but it left an impression. Ava unfolded the paper again. This time it said something new. You are not the first to survive collapse, but you are the first to remain aware of it. She didn't ask permission. She stepped through the door. Interior, the fold layer below sink. The world changed in a single breath. Not transition. Not travel. Just shift. Like blinking and realizing you were never in the room you thought you were. The fold was not what she expected. It wasn't void. It wasn't chaos. It was quiet. Sterile halls. Infinite rooms. Some filled with still lives, dining tables mid-meal, clocks forever stuck at 3:17, photographs slowly cycling through unfamiliar faces. Some filled with windows. Each one a portal into another version of Bridgemire. One where Lucas lived. One where Max was an only child. One where Ava never existed. She reached out to touch one. Her hand passed through. A ripple. A flash of memory not her own. She staggered back. She wandered. Every door was labeled. She passed one that read, Observer Node 17A Subject. Eli Ward / expired. Another. Anchor Refusal Log. Jules Moreno / terminated. Memory residue pending. Her hands trembled. She kept walking. At the end of one hallway, she found a console. It hummed softly like a heartbeat. The screen flickered on its own. Words typed themselves across the monitor. Adatas in its ELR. Match found. Primary code, legacy / Bridgemire 03. External connection, detected. She blinked. More words scrolled. Then a diagram appeared. A sync chart. Two systems aligned by a faint line of light. 03 Bridgemire. 07 Sauderque. Beneath it. Merge point, unstable / initiated. Ava whispered the words. ST. REQ. Behind her, the hallway lights dimmed. Another door opened. This one wasn't labeled. Inside was a girl. About her age. Short hair. Sharp eyes. Standing tall like she had something to protect. Not afraid. Not surprised. Just focused. The girl stepped forward. Are you real? She asked. Ava didn't answer. Neither did the girl. They stood in silence. Then the girl stepped back and whispered. Camille. She said someone might come through. Ava's heart stopped. She didn't know who Camille was. But somehow the name felt like a thread pulling through her chest. The girl offered her hand. Ava took it. Their fingers overlapped for a second. And the fold screamed. Not pain. Rejection. Two anchors from two systems were never meant to meet. And yet, they did. The fold began to fracture. Reality shuddered. The hallway started to collapse into fog. The girl held on. Ava gritted her teeth. A ripple of shared memory flooded between them. A lighthouse in the snow. A song hummed by someone long dead. A night sky that had never belonged to either of them. Then, silence. When Ava opened her eyes again, she was back in Bridgemire. But it was raining stars. Not fire. Not meteor. Just tiny, glowing fragments falling from the sky. The streets were full of them. People paused. Looked up. Some reached out. Some smiled. Some cried. Ava stood in the center of it all alone. And whispered. She's real. Chapter 16. This is not the end. It started with the stars. The ones that fell. They didn't burn up, or vanish, or hit the ground. They landed gently on rooftops, street signs, mailboxes. Soft pinpricks of memory, glowing like fireflies in reverse. And people began to change. Not violently. Just suddenly. Ava watched from the center of Main Street as the world glitched in soft, human ways. A girl froze mid-text and whispered, "This isn't my house." An old man blinked and asked where his daughter had gone, only she'd never existed here. A mother looked at her child like it was someone else's. Names were spoken aloud that didn't belong. Faces didn't match the memories behind them. People were waking up. remembering versions of themselves they were never allowed to be. The fold was collapsing, not exploding. Exhaling, Max found her near the park. His shirt was torn, his eyes wild, but there was recognition in them. Real Max. Not an echo. Not a mirror. He ran straight to her and hugged her like he hadn't done since they were 12. "I thought you were gone," he breathed into her shoulder. "I was," Ava said. "A lot of times." He didn't let go. Neither did she. But the ground beneath Bridgemire was no longer safe. Pavement peeled back in perfect hexagonal spirals, revealing circuitry underneath. Buildings flickered like old film reels, looping between different architectural styles. Some houses vanished mid-frame. Others pulsed like breathing lungs. At the edge of town, the boundary shimmered. What used to be forest was now void. A blank canvas, pixelated and waiting. Jules appeared in the smoke. She wasn't whole, but she was real enough. Ava ran to her, catching her before she collapsed. Her eyes were glassy. Her skin half reflected light. But she smiled. "Hey, Sinclair," she rasped. "Still breaking things?" "You're not supposed to be here," Ava whispered. "I wasn't," Jules said. "But then you remembered me too hard." Ava laughed, tears in her eyes. "You always show up at the worst time." "Yeah," Jules whispered. "That's how you know it's really me." They took her to the greenhouse, the only place the fold hadn't touched. Inside, time still passed. Plants still grew. Reality still obeyed gravity. Ava, Max, and Jules stood in the warmth of growing things while everything else ended outside. Ava unfolded the paper the perfected version had given her. Noah Sinclair. System 6R fold. A match. A version of herself from another place. She didn't know her, but she'd seen her, felt her. She remembered a voice in the dark, saying Camille's name like it meant everything. The bridge had formed. Now the question was whether to walk it. Max sat beside her. "You can feel it too, can't you?" She nodded. "The edge of everything." He leaned his head back. "So what now? We just step off." Ava didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared at the sky. The stars had stopped falling, but the cracks between them remained, like veins of silver spidering through the heavens. "Maybe it's not a step off," she said. "Maybe it's a step through." The fold gave no final warning, no countdown. At 2:13 a.m., reality blinked, and Bridgemire was gone. Not erased. Merged. Ava stood in white light. No floor. No air. Just presence. Before her stood 3 doors. One with her name Evie. One labeled, Observer Offline // Redirecting. And one with a strange sigil, a spiral surrounded by 4 stars. She knew which one led to safety. She knew which one led to isolation. And she knew which one led to something else. She stepped toward the 3rd door. Inside. Not a room. Not a world. A corridor of echoes. She heard every voice she'd ever lost. Her father whispering a lullaby. Jules laughing in the gym. Max telling her not to blame herself. Lucas screaming her name as he fell. And behind them, a new voice. Soft. Familiar. Not quite hers. Noah. Ava whispered her name aloud. And the corridor shifted. Colors sharpened. Time bent. And for one impossible moment, Ava saw her. Not in the flesh. Not in the mirror. In sync. Another her. Another fighter. Another survivor. Looking through the same breach. At her. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They just nodded. 2 anchors. 2 errors. 2 doors now open. Behind Ava, the fold screamed once more. Not rejection. Not pain. But release. Like a breath held too long finally let go. And ahead, something else stirred. A future that did not belong to one world or the other. A new system. One without an observer. Chapter 17, The Things You Bury. She didn't know where the corridor ended. It had no walls, no gravity, just echoes. Ava floated through them like a signal crossing frequencies. The air shimmered with light and voice, memory and contradiction. Names surfaced in her mind without context. Noah, Camille, Rhea. She didn't know them, but her bones did. In the distance, a figure waited. Not threatening, not welcoming, just present. She drifted toward it instinctively, like she was retracing steps from a dream she hadn't had yet. As she approached, the figure came into focus. Not a monster, not a system construct. Lucas, but younger. Maybe 16, the version of him just before everything went wrong. He looked up. "Hey," he said. "You came." Ava's chest went tight. "You're not real." "No," he agreed. "But neither are you. Not like this." She paused. "Then what am I?" He smiled faintly. "A choice." The space around them transformed. Suddenly, they were sitting in the tunnel again. Flashlights low. Dust in the air. But this time it wasn't fractured. It wasn't haunted. It was quiet. Lucas leaned against the wall, legs crossed. "You didn't let me fall, you know," he said. "Not really. I didn't stop it either." He tilted his head. "You did what you could. That's what people forget." She closed her eyes. The guilt still pulsed beneath her skin like a second heartbeat. He continued, softer now. "You held on as long as you could, but I was already halfway gone." She whispered, "I should have fought harder." "You did, just not in the way you think." The scene shifted again. Now they were in the greenhouse. It was night. Stars rained softly outside like glitter through fog. Jules sat nearby, idly braiding her hair. She didn't speak, just smiled when Ava looked her way. Max leaned against the doorframe, scribbling something into a notebook that pulsed with faint green light. None of them said what Ava knew they meant. "This is goodbye." Lucas stood again. His silhouette began to shimmer at the edges like a page being burned in reverse. "There's a version of you that lets this all go. There's a version of me that doesn't want to," she said. He gave a crooked smile. "Then that version of you needs to forgive herself." "I don't think I can." Lucas stepped forward. "Then take the next best thing." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small. Something bright. Ava gasped. It was the mirror. Cracked but glowing faintly at the center. The reflection didn't mimic her. It showed Noah, looking right at her. "You're the tether now," Lucas said. "Not the key. Not the error. The bridge." Ava reached for the mirror and flinched. It burned cold in her hands. She looked into it. Noah was speaking, but there was no sound. Only shapes. Only motion. And then, clarity. Noah's lips formed a word Ava understood. "Run." The greenhouse shattered. The corridor twisted. And Ava was pulled into a new space. Not the fold. Not Bridgemire. Somewhere between. The stars here were shattered and falling backward like a film played in reverse. The ground was a mirror with no reflection. The only structure was a lighthouse, tall and flickering like a dying memory. And Ava remembered. The voice in the dark. The corridor. Camille. The other side of the fracture. She ran. She didn't wait. Not this time. She didn't question. She believed. The lighthouse pulsed as she approached, a signal beacon not for ships but for anchors. Inside, she found the spiral again. The symbol that had followed her since the beginning. Only this time it wasn't carved in stone or floating in hologram. It was alive. A pulsing doorway. And beside it, a handprint. Not hers. Noah's. She recognized it now. She placed her hand beside it. The two prints synced. A chime sounded. The spiral rotated once. And the voice returned. The same strange, broken tone she'd heard in the corridor. But this time, unified. Tether complete. Portal alignment successful. Merge pending. Ava looked back once. The greenhouse. Lucas. Jules. Max. They were all still there, just elsewhere now. Not erased. Not forgotten. Let go. She whispered, "Thank you," and stepped through. On the other side, the world changed. The stars above her were wrong. The buildings nearby were sharp-edged and modern. The smell was different, metal and ozone. And standing at the edge of a broken bridge, Noah Sinclair. Back to her. Hair short, jacket torn, skin flecked with glowing marks like embers beneath her skin. She turned slowly, eyes narrowing, recognition blooming. "You're not from here," she said. Ava didn't smile, didn't cry, just nodded. "No, but I think I'm supposed to be." Chapter 18, The Other Side of the Mirror. It was raining sparks. Not fire, not heat, just quiet, drifting specks of light that hovered in the air like ash that refused to fall. Ava stood at the edge of a ruined bridge, its metal beams twisted into arcs that pointed at the sky. Across from her, Noah Sinclair didn't move. Not afraid, not welcoming, just aware. Their names were the same. Their timelines weren't. Ava took the first step. Noah didn't back away. Instead, her fingers tightened around the strap of the satchel slung over her shoulder. Worn canvas, scuffed like it had been through wars. "You're not a reflection," Noah said finally. Ava shook her head. "Not anymore." They stood in silence as wind rolled across the dead bridge. The city behind Noah was unlike anything Ava had seen. Towers twisted toward the sky like coral grown from wire. Roads floated above each other in tight, impossible spirals. A black monorail traced a path that disappeared into clouds, and flickering screens on buildings pulsed with indecipherable patterns, not words, not images, but thoughts projected in color. Ava whispered, "Where am I?" Noah tilted her head. "This is what's left." "Of what?" "Us." They walked in silence. Noah didn't ask questions. Ava didn't explain. It was like the world already knew who Ava was. Her presence barely stirred the fabric here. People passed them without noticing. A man offered them fruit from a stall and called Noah by name but didn't flinch at Ava's. She didn't exist here, but the world accepted her anyway, like she'd already been written in. They reached a rooftop garden at the edge of the city. Noah sat on the concrete railing, pulling a folded schematic from her satchel and spreading it out. Ava looked closer. It was a map, not of a place but of a pattern. Folds of reality stacked in spirals. Layered fractures. A centerline splitting two universes like a surgical incision. Ava pointed at a point near the edge. "Bridgemire." Noah nodded. "Collapsed. Or absorbed. Depends on how you define survival." "And this?" Ava asked, pointing at the spiral core. Noah looked up at her. "That's why you're here." Ava sat. The sparks from earlier drifted around them, pulsing like fireflies caught in sync. She finally asked, "Who are you?" Noah looked at her. "Anchor." She paused. "Error." Another pause. "Or if you ask Camille, miracle that shouldn't exist." Ava's breath caught. "Camille." I heard her name. "You will again," Noah said. "She's not here right now, but she knows you're coming." Ava leaned back against the garden wall, eyes scanning the sky. The constellations here were alien. Stars blinked in sharp mathematical patterns. "Everything here feels broken," she said. "It is," Noah replied, "but not in the way you think." Ava closed her eyes. "The fold was trying to fix me." Noah didn't respond at first. Then, "It wasn't just trying to fix you. It was trying to isolate you, to keep you from getting here." "Why?" Noah turned to face her fully for the first time. Her voice was quiet, careful, because someone built the fold to contain the bleed between systems, between versions of reality that were never supposed to touch. Ava's pulse quickened. "And now?" Noah folded the map. "It's failing." They moved back through the city as dusk fell, though the sky never turned orange. Just a slow desaturation into deep violet. At a plaza near a drain fountain, Noah stopped. "Close your eyes," she said. Ava hesitated but obeyed. "Now listen." Silence. And then, not sound, not speech, but feeling. Memories not her own. A girl chasing shadows through a star field. A voice singing beneath a ruined tower. A pulse in the soil. Noah's voice reached through it. "You feel it too, don't you?" Ava nodded. What is it? Noah answered without hesitation. The next door. They returned to Noah's apartment, bare, reinforced, scattered with old gear and strange equipment Ava couldn't name. Noah stood at the edge of the room, arms crossed. You were the first to breach. The first to make the jump across layers without being destroyed. Ava met her gaze. Am I supposed to help you fix this? Noah shook her head. You're not here to fix anything. Then why am I here? Noah stepped closer, finally letting something like vulnerability slip through. Because you're the only one who remembers what we're supposed to be. Ava sat in the window, knees drawn to her chest, watching the sky pulse with fractured stars. Jules, she whispered. Max Lucas. Her mother. Her father. Bridgemeyer. All drifting behind her. Still part of her, but not hers to hold anymore. Noah sat beside her. Neither of them spoke. Until Noah whispered. You saw the lighthouse, didn't you? Ava turned to her slowly. Eyes wide. How do you know? Noah answered. Because that's where we started too. Chapter 19, Camille's Law. The next morning came without sunlight. This world didn't cycle days like Bridgemeyer. Time stretched like thread here, measured not in hours but in pulses. Ava sat in the windowsill of Noah's flat, legs folded beneath her, eyes fixed on the fractured sky. The stars above no longer shimmered, they ticked now, like mechanical nerves firing in rhythm. She hadn't slept. Not really. Her body didn't seem to need it anymore. Noah emerged from the other room, jacket on, eyes sharp. She dropped a calm crystal the size of a marble into Ava's hand. Camille's waiting. Ava caught the faintest flicker of hesitation in Noah's posture. She doesn't like strangers? Ava asked. She doesn't like variables. The elevator took them down too far. Past the bottom floors of the tower. Past the underground level. Deeper. They passed through silence. Then pressure. Then light again. The chamber they arrived in had no walls. Just projection. A simulation of an open sky with a slow-moving aurora. Beneath their feet, a glass platform hovered over nothingness. And at its center stood Camille Zhao. She turned as they entered. Noah stayed back. Ava stepped forward. Camille was shorter than Ava expected, with storm-dark eyes and hair in an unbraided twist, like she'd woken up mid-dream and decided to keep going. Her coat was covered in patches, symbols Ava didn't recognize. But her voice was calm, precise. You crossed a fracture that wasn't meant to be crossed. I didn't mean to, Ava said. You did. Subconsciously. Or the system wouldn't have opened. Camille walked slowly around her. You are Ava Sinclair. Bridgemeyer node. Class 3 anchor. Emotional tether type. Recovered post-collapse, unprocessed, unfiltered. Sync stable across 2 structures. Ava blinked. How do you? Camille tapped her temple. We've been watching for a long time. Noah stepped beside her now, gaze steady. Camille finally paused. We thought your type was theoretical. A self-aware anchor shouldn't survive a full-fold correction. But somehow you not only survived, you adapted. You became a door. Ava swallowed hard. Why does that matter? Camille's expression didn't change. Because the last time someone like you existed, they rewrote the entire network. She brought up a projection. A fractured spiral, the same one Ava had seen on the lighthouse door. But this time it glitched. The spiral stuttered, then split, revealing a second structure behind it. Camille spoke low. We call it the under pattern, the code underneath everything, the bones of reality. She turned to Ava. You're triggering it. Ava stepped back. I didn't ask for this. No, Camille agreed. But you're here now. And that means one of 2 things is happening. She held up 2 fingers. 1, you are the bridge. A convergence point that allows controlled sync between failing worlds. Or, Camille let her hand drop. 2, you're the catalyst. The reason everything collapses. Silence. Noah shifted, clearly uncomfortable. Ava looked down at her hands. They didn't shake. They didn't glow. They were just hands. Familiar. Real. But were they still hers? She looked up. How do you know which I am? Camille smiled a little too sadly. We don't. Not yet. She led Ava deeper into the chamber. Another door. This one wasn't glass or stone, it was woven from data threads, gold and violet strands moving like nervous tissue. This is a bridge archive, Camille said. A vault of crossover points. Reality echoes. Things the fold tried to erase. Ava entered. The space was endless. Moments lived in crystal form. Shards of memory locked in floating orbs. Camille touched one. Ava gasped. Bridgemire. An earlier version. She saw herself 10 years old running with Max down a hill. Before the fractures. Before the tunnels. Before Lucas. She stepped toward it, but Camille held her back. These are not for revisiting. They're for reminding. They walked in silence. At the end of the chamber sat a device. A chair. It looked like it belonged in a dream, part science, part throne, part grave. Ava recoiled. No. Camille's tone softened. It's the only way we know. Noah stepped in. She just got here. You can't expect. She needs to see what we're dealing with. Ava's voice cracked. What does it do? It lets you see your sink. All of it. Every fracture you've been tethered to. Every version of you still active. Every line of collapse you've survived. Ava didn't move. Camille's voice grew quiet. If you really want to understand why the fold couldn't erase you, this is the only way. Ava sat. The machine hummed. Light spun around her in delicate strands, sound and vision and weightless sensation. She felt herself unravel, but not painfully, like fog lifting from a mirror. And then, she saw herself. Thousands of her. Some smiling, some lost, some running, one bleeding beneath a red moon. All of them real. All of them gone. Except her. The last one standing. The vision shifted, and she saw Noah. Her anchor. The other breach. And behind Noah, two more. Rhea Allen walking across a rooftop holding a blade of pure light. Camille Zhao whispering to a wall that breathed like lungs. And farther still. A room. Another lighthouse. Another girl. Someone Ava didn't know yet. But would. Because the door to her world had already opened. The machine shut off. Ava gasped as she came back. Camille watched her carefully. You're not broken, she said. You're aligned. Outside, the sky cracked. A single line of light cut across the city like a scar. Noah's voice was tight. It's starting. What is? Ava asked. Camille didn't blink. The collapse. Chapter 20, The Collapse Algorithm. The line of light in the sky widened. It didn't flash or burst, it peeled like the atmosphere was tearing from the inside out. Beneath it, the city stopped. Traffic froze. People paused mid-step. 1,000 lives holding their breath at once. And above them all, in that growing split in the sky, Ava saw something terrible. Not destruction. Not invasion. But structure. A third pattern trying to impose itself over the two already failing. A system that didn't belong to either of their worlds. Camille stood motionless at the glass edge of the observatory. The projection around them stuttered as the code struggled to hold. This isn't the fold, she said quietly. Noah joined her. Then what is it? Camille didn't answer right away. Then. It's the thing that comes after. They returned to the vault. Camille moved quickly now, voice sharp. We assumed the fold was our worst-case scenario. But this is a total overwrite. Ava stepped into the spiral projection chamber, watching the strands twist tighter. Noah studied the rising sync points. Another collapse? Camille shook her head. Worse. A correction. She pulled up a holographic stream, 3 layered systems. One was Bridgemire's spiral. One was the fractured city Ava now stood in, Noah's world. And now a third, smoother, colder. An elegant curve of light with no irregularities. Perfect. Lifeless. This structure doesn't allow for variance, Camille said. No echoes. No memory. No bleed. No bridges. Noah stepped forward. Then why us? Ava answered, her voice quiet. Because we're the last systems left that remember. They didn't sleep that night. No one did. The light in the sky split again, a second scar forming a rough X over the city. Debris from the upper levels rained down like ash. Camille called a meeting. Only 6 people showed up. No engineers. No watchtower officers. Just 3 surviving bridge sinks, 2 null-space observers, and Ava. They were all tired. Camille didn't waste time. System 9 is activating, she said. It's overriding anchors. Patching fractures by eliminating any nodes with variance history. Noah narrowed her eyes. So us. All of us, Camille said. We are considered contaminants now. Our sync threads are too erratic. We're being pruned. Ava sat very still. What happens if we do nothing? Camille didn't blink. The correction system wins. And everything we remember gets erased permanently, rewritten to baseline logic. Is that death? Camille met her eyes. No. It's compliance. The team started assembling a rupture plan. A final bridge, not between 2 systems, but a loop that could fold the collapsing structures into themselves, shielding the memories, the bleed threads, the humans inside from the overwrite. But it would cost everything. It would take an anchor, one powerful enough to hold a merge line open long enough to collapse the loop. Everyone turned to Ava. She didn't hesitate. That night, Ava stood alone at the base of the spiral tower. The sky above her glitched harder now, pulses of logic light bleeding through reality like veins. The ground beneath her feet hummed. She held the mirror again. It no longer showed her reflection. It showed Noah. Not her now, but her before. A version still laughing, still trusting, still innocent. Ava closed her eyes. Don't let me forget who we were. Noah found her an hour later. You're really going to do it? Ava nodded. I can't let it rewrite this. You'll be exposed the entire time. Ava looked over. So stay close. Camille watched from the chamber above. The last of the sync cores were activating. Bridgemeyer's pulse. Noah's sector grid. Ava's anchor thread, bright and unfiltered. But none of them were stable enough on their own. And so Camille did something she had never planned. She reached into her coat and pulled out the data spike, the one she'd stolen from the original fold layer before it collapsed. She whispered, "Forgive me." And she synced herself in. They launched the loop pointed dawn. Reality shook as the spirals aligned. The ground twisted. The stars inverted. Ava stepped into the center ring of the array. Noah held her hand. Camille activated the spike. The sky split a final time. And through the tear came not soldiers or drones or machines, but white light. A shape of pure logic. No identity. No voice. Only order. The voice came through the ground itself. Discrepancy detected. System resolution initiated. Ava screamed through clenched teeth as the array pulsed around her. The correction field pushed in, slow and exact, like glass closing in from all sides. And then, Noah let go of her hand and stepped forward. Her own thread began to pulse. Noah, I'm synced too, she whispered. You're not doing this alone. Camille yelled over the rising pitch, if you both stay, the loop will collapse before it seals. Ava looked at Noah. Noah looked back. They didn't speak. They just held the line. The system screamed. Not sound. Not pain. Just disapproval. As if they were wrong for still existing. Still remembering. Still choosing each other. Camille shouted into the storm. Now! The sync field detonated in reverse. The light shattered. The array burned white. A ripple fired outward across both systems, not a blast, but a compression, a drawing inward. The fold ruptured. The correction engine tore. And for a single breath, Ava and Noah stood at the center of everything. Hands clasped, anchors aligned, and whispered together. We remember. Chapter 21, The Shape of What Survives. The world ended quietly. No explosion. No fire. No final scream. Just stillness. Like the hush that comes after the last note of a song has faded. Ava opened her eyes and realized she wasn't falling. She was standing in a field. Soft wind blew across her skin, warm and familiar. Above her, the sky was blue but wrong. The stars were still there, even in daylight, spiraling faintly, not in constellations but in patterns. Memory-encoded light. She touched the grass. It shimmered beneath her fingers. Not synthetic, not fabricated, just new. A voice behind her. "You're awake." Ava turned. Noah. Alive. Unchanged. But something in her eyes had deepened, like she'd seen too many versions of herself all at once and learned how to live with them. Ava ran to her. They didn't speak. They just stood there holding each other. Alive. Together. The last of their threads still humming. They explored in silence. What had once been fractured towers now lay in soft ruin, not destroyed, but reclaimed. Vines crawled through data conduits. Water filled once dry streets. And everywhere they looked, the laws were different. Bridgemire buildings next to Starlight's tech ruins. People speaking two dialects in the same breath. No central authority. No system interface. No correction pulses. Just life trying to begin again. They found Camille at the edge of the river. Her coat was torn. Her hands were shaking. But she was alive. She turned to them with a dry smile. "Told you memory mattered." Ava sank to her knees beside her. "Did it work?" Camille looked up at the swirling sky. "We didn't win." She paused. "But we weren't erased either." They built a signal tower. Old school. Analog. No data tether. No bridge code. Just steel and sky and wire. They lit it at night. Not for rescue, but so that others like them would know this place still existed. Jules found them 3 days later. She stepped out of the water, hair soaked, eyes wide with disbelief. "Sinclair," she rasped. Ava stared at her for a full minute before she could move. She tackled her into the grass. Max followed 2 days later. He didn't recognize Noah, but he hugged her anyway, like instinct carried more weight than explanation. Camille just stood there, watching them all, arms crossed like she hadn't orchestrated the impossible. No one thanked her. She didn't ask for it. By the end of the week, others arrived. Some from Bridgemire. Some from Starlight's remaining zones. Some without names, just echoes who found enough of themselves to become real again. They didn't ask who was in charge. There was no system left to obey. Only memory. Only choice. Ava stood on the tower platform, wind tugging at her sleeves, the night filled with pulsing stars that never settled into stillness. "You ever wonder," Noah said, "what this world would have been if we hadn't broken it first?" Ava smiled, sad but certain. "I think it always needed to break." The mirror was gone, shattered in the collapse. But sometimes Ava still saw flickers, not of herself, but of versions. One running through a garden of glass. One holding Jules's hand under a red moon. One alone, standing at the edge of an infinite sea. And she loved them all. Because they were her. And they made her whole. Camille began mapping again. But not to predict the future. Just to remember what had led them here. She called it Camille's Law, a theory not of physics but of survival. Anything remembered is never truly gone. That night, Ava wrote a name in the soil near the signal tower. Lucas. The ground shimmered faintly, accepting it. She whispered. "You made it too." The stars pulsed again. No longer threatening. Just waiting. Because something new was forming. Not a fold. Not a collapse. A third spiral. A convergence. Something stable. Not perfect. Not safe. But possible. And Ava smiled. Because for the first time in either world, she knew what came next was theirs to choose. Chapter 22. Frequencies that shouldn't exist. They heard it just after midnight. A slow static lace pulse that didn't match any broadcast in the tower system. Ava was the first to notice it. She sat up in bed, heart already racing. The tower lights dimmed. And the radio began to hum. Camille arrived less than 2 minutes later, hair unbraided, a coil of diagnostic wire slung over one shoulder. "Where's the source?" she asked, voice tight. Jules was at the console, frowning. "Not from inside the grid." It's not even from this world. Max leaned over the readout. That's not possible. But Ava was already standing at the window, staring at the stars. No, she whispered. It's familiar. They played the signal back. It was fractured, warbling and pulsing, barely coherent. But layered beneath the static was something unmistakable. A voice. A lining. Anchor. Requiem. Jules sat up straighter. Did that just say Requiem? Camille's face darkened. Noah's voice broke the silence. It's her. They all turned. Who? Max asked. Noah stepped forward, eyes wide, heart in her throat. Rhea. The transmission was too broken to track, but it had a direction, somewhere north of the spiral's new center, deep beyond where any of them had dared explore since the collapse. The signal repeated every 47 seconds, and each time it grew clearer. Requiem. Spiral anchor breached. Surviving transmission unstable. Camille looked pale. She survived. Ava blinked. Who is she? Camille took a long breath. Camille's law had a second part, one I never wrote down. Jules arched a brow. And Camille looked at the screen. If one spiral survives, another always hears it. They gathered what gear they had, not much. Their new world didn't allow for precision tech. Most of what Camille built short-circuited if it tried to interface too cleanly with the broken systems. But Ava didn't care. If there was someone out there, someone calling across worlds, she had to answer. So did Noah. The journey north was longer than they expected. The further they went from the spiral's core, the more reality degraded. Skies flickered. Time warped. At one point, Max swore he saw a memory of himself climbing out of a tree he'd never been in. Jules saw a version of her house, just the front porch floating in air. But Ava saw something worse. She saw Lucas, standing on a hillside, barefoot in the grass. He didn't speak. He just pointed toward the edge. They reached it on the fourth day. A ravine that shimmered with unfinished space, like the world had run out of texture. The signal was loud here. No static. No distance. It was broadcasting directly from the breach. Camille pulled out the last working shard of the anchor mirror and held it to the edge. It pulsed blue, then white, then black. The breach opened. They weren't ready for what they saw. Not another world. Not exactly. But a corridor. Twisting. Unstable. Filled with reflections. Not glass moments. As they stepped inside, the reflections followed them. Ava holding Noah's hand in the spiral tower. Jules laughing with Lucas. Max watching the garden grow in Bridgemeyer's ruins. Camille alone, whispering equations to a wall of light. And then, Rhea. She was bleeding. One arm wrapped in a strip of torn fabric, the other holding a blade made from crystallized energy. Her eyes locked on Ava instantly. You're not from here, she rasped. Ava stepped forward. No, but I heard you. Behind Rhea, the corridor flickered. It wasn't stable. Reality cracked like old ice. Camille stepped forward. How long have you been trapped? Rhea didn't blink. Since the Requiem collapsed. Since Noah left. Noah froze. Ava turned. You knew her. Rhea's expression didn't change. I still do. They pulled her from the corridor together. It didn't close behind them. It didn't vanish. It waited, as if another was still inside. Back at the tower, Rhea slept for almost 2 full days. When she finally woke, she spoke just 6 words before sitting up. She's still in there, Camille. Camille's breath caught. Who? Rhea looked at Ava, then at Noah, and finally back at Camille. You. Chapter 23, The Mirror That Refuses to Close. Camille didn't sleep after Rhea's warning. She just sat beneath the signal tower, watching the flicker of stars that no longer belonged to any known system. The world around them had stabilized, but just barely. Their spiral wasn't healed. It was paused. Ava approached quietly. She said it was you. Camille didn't answer right away. She didn't mean Mimi. Ava frowned. Then who? Camille finally looked at her. The version of me who never let go. They reconvened in the observatory. Rhea sat cross-legged at the center, eyes clearer now, wounds dressed, voice steady. "There's more in that corridor than you think," she warned. "It's not just crossover fragments or echoes. It's people, versions, entire identities left behind when their systems failed." Noah leaned forward. "You were in there how long?" "Long enough to know that time doesn't work the same. And that it's getting worse. The corridor's collapsing in on itself. If we don't go back soon, whatever's in there will seal shut." Max paced. "So what exactly are we pulling out?" Rhea looked at Camille. "She's smart. She knows. She built the map." Camille closed her eyes. "She means Mirror Camille." The plan was rough, no time for precision. Jules and Max stayed topside to monitor breach activity. Rhea insisted on joining, despite the residual effects of corridor exposure. Noah and Ava had already packed. They descended at dawn, through the spiraling crevasse, past the place where light distorted into memory, back into the corridor between spirals. Inside, the world was fluid. Moments hovered in walls like trapped breath. The floor shimmered. Their steps echoed like voices. The deeper they walked, the more the corridor pressed in. Time bled sideways. Emotions swirled through the air like fog. Ava heard her mother's laugh. Noah saw herself on the rooftop the night the fold first cracked. And Rhea paused, trembling, as a memory flickered across the wall. A version of Camille smiling at her. Younger, brighter, alive. They found her at the center. Camille. But not the Camille. She stood in a mirror chamber that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat, surrounded by a constellation of abandoned tools, sketches, and looping messages written in her own handwriting. "It doesn't work. It never worked. But I can't stop trying." She turned when they entered, eyes too calm. "You finally showed up," she said. "Took you long enough." Ava stepped forward slowly. "Camille?" Mirror Camille tilted her head. "You're not mine, but close enough." Rhea swallowed. "We came to pull you out." "Out of what?" she asked, gesturing around the mirror chamber. "This is all that's left. All that remains of me. The moment I gave up trying to be her." She looked past Ava, past Rhea, straight to Camille. The real one. The one who had survived. Camille stepped into the room. It hurt to see herself like this, so brittle, so focused, so lost in a loop. "I left this behind for a reason." Mirror Camille laughed bitterly. "Then why do you keep dreaming about it?" The corridor pulsed. Pressure built around them. Ava felt it first, the tug. It wasn't trying to eject them. It was trying to split them. Noah fell to her knees, clutching her head as timelines twisted through her thoughts. Rhea steadied her, but she was swaying too. The corridor knew her weaknesses now. Ava turned sharply. "We don't have long." Camille looked at her fractured self. "Come with us." "No." "Why?" Mirror Camille looked at the others. "Because if I leave, she breaks again." She pointed at Camille. "You only survived because I stayed here holding the weight. I became your silence so you could become something louder." Ava stepped forward. "Then let us carry it with you." The corridor shuddered. Reality twisted. Images of Bridgemire flashed across the walls, then the Requiem skyline. Echoes of the fold cracked through the floor. Ava shouted, "We don't have to leave you behind." Mirror Camille looked at her, then at Camille, then at Noah. Her voice softened. "If I come with you, I stop being a mirror." Camille reached out a hand. "Then be a whole person instead." She took the hand. The corridor snapped inward, like a collapsing lung. They ran, dragging her out, barely staying ahead of the distortion wave. Jules' voice crackled over the anchor beacon. "You've got 30 seconds until the breach closes." Camille didn't look back. Neither did Ava. Neither did Rhea. They jumped and landed on solid ground, hard and real. The breach sealed behind them. The corridor gone. Camille sat up slowly. So did the other Camille. But now there wasn't confusion in her eyes. Just relief. A convergence. Not two Camilles. Not a mirror and a source. Just Camille Zhao. Whole. Finally. Noah offered her a bottle of water. Ava just smiled, breathless. You made it. Camille looked at her hands like they were new. I think I did. That night the stars pulsed again, but not in warning, in rhythm, a message rippling through the spiral sky like heartbeat. One last node remains. Opening vector 001. Starlight. Merge finalization pending. They looked at each other. Max whispered. There's one more. Camille whispered back. The last piece of the pattern. Chapter 24. Spiral convergence. The sky pulsed for a full hour before anyone moved. A perfect spiral of white light coiled above the tower, flickering with no sound, no heat, just presence. It wasn't threatening. It was asking. Camille stood beneath it, head tilted up, mouth slightly parted. I think it's waiting for us. Ava stepped beside her. To do what? Camille's voice was low. To finish the pattern. Rhea deciphered the signal first. It wasn't just a broadcast, it was a map. A vector thread opening into one final node, starlight. Not the broken corridors or fragments they'd walked through before, but the source. The Requiem spiral, she said, pressing a hand to her chest. Where we came from. Where it all began. Noah frowned. I thought that system collapsed. Rhea turned to her. It did. She looked up at the spiral. But something inside it never stopped spinning. They prepared without words. Everyone knew this was the end of the path. The signal didn't offer a return vector. No promise of stability. Just a pull steady, certain like gravity across realities. Ava strapped on the last remaining anchor gear. Jules kissed Max on the forehead before handing him the combeacon. Noah handed Camille the first working map of the merged spiral. Just in case, she said. Camille tucked it into her coat, then whispered. Let's end it right. The moment they stepped into the convergence vector, the world inverted. There was no flash. No collapse. Just a shift. Like blinking between two dreams. They emerged into light. Soft. Diffuse. Everywhere. They were standing on a platform of smooth black stone suspended in an endless field of sky. Not the real sky, a memory of it. All around them, the spiral unfolded like petals, thousands of moments, places, and identities interwoven into a pattern too large to understand. And at the center stood a single figure. A woman. Barefoot. Back turned. Hair blowing in a wind that wasn't there. She spoke without turning. You made it. Ava stepped forward. Who are you? The woman smiled. I'm the system's first anchor. The one who opened the original breach. The reason the spirals collapsed. Camille narrowed her eyes. You're the origin. She nodded. Not by choice. But I've been holding this place open, waiting for someone to find the rest of me. She finally turned. And Ava's breath caught. Because she looked like all of them. A little like Jules. A little like Camille. A little like Noah. But mostly like Rhea. The woman lifted a hand and the spiral shimmered. You've done something none of us thought possible. You merged variants. Memory. Emotion. Choice. You didn't reject the broken parts, you brought them with you. She stepped closer. But convergence always requires a price. Ava's throat tightened. What kind of price? The woman tilted her head. You must choose what survives. The sky pulsed. The spiral around them flickered, shifting between worlds. They saw Bridgemire, tunnels and towers, echo forms and faded gods. They saw Requiem, cold cities humming with logic and light. They saw the fractured corridors, where memories floated untethered. And then they saw each other. Their lives, their choices, their pain, each a thread in the spiral. The woman spread her hands. I can't hold this space much longer. You've proven it can be done. You've built a stable spiral, but it won't last unless you tell it what to become. Noah looked at Camille. Camille looked at Rhea. Ava stepped forward. Then let us decide together. The woman nodded once. Then remember. She placed a hand to Ava's forehead. And Ava fell. Into every memory. Max laughing beside her in the tunnels. Jules cutting her hand to mark a vow. Noah standing with her beneath the collapsing sky. Camille whispering, "You're not broken." Lucas saying goodbye. Rhea dragging herself out of the corridor, still alive. Camille holding her own hand, fractured and whole. The stars. The sound of collapse. The silence after. Ava opened her eyes. She was crying. But not from grief. From clarity. "We don't need to erase anything," she said. "Not the pain. Not the past. Not the versions of ourselves we left behind." She looked at each of them. "We build forward. Not perfect, but honest." Rhea smiled. "Then we build." The woman closed her eyes, and the spiral began to spin. Faster. Brighter. Folding not inward, but outward into a new shape. Not a spiral. Not a line, but something undefined. A story still being written. They didn't go back, because there was no back anymore. Only forward. Only the new world they'd chosen. Later, they would call it the woven spiral. A place where memory lived. Where stories from Bridgemire, Requiem, and beyond could continue, not in opposition, but as part of a greater whole. No gods. No collapse. No fold. Just people. Flawed. Alive. Free. Ava stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the rebuilt city, not the same, but familiar. Noah beside her. Camille sketching in her journal. Rhea building a new anchor tower from shattered crystal. Jules laughing with Max over some impossible new plant. And Ava smiled. Because in the end, they had remembered. And that made all the difference. Thanks for listening. Stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next story.